The cold hits him first. Not the dry, thin cold of the Hindu Kush, the kind that freezes your nostrils shut and makes your teeth ache, but something heavier, wetter, a Virginia cold that crawls under your collar and sits on your chest like a drunk stranger on a bus. The kind of cold that says, "Welcome home, nobody asked you to come." Captain Brian Barrows stands at the end of Maplecrest Lane with his duffel bag slung over one shoulder and a wool cap crushed in his left fist. He's been squeezing it for the last 40 minutes, maybe longer. His knuckles are white. His fingers have forgotten how to let go. The street is quiet, suburban quiet. The kind of quiet that has a sound, the low hum of central heating units, the distant bark of a neighbor's dog, the wet whisper of wind through bare oak trees. It's the sound of people living their lives behind walls, and it makes his stomach turn in a way he can't explain. He starts walking. His boots are filthy, caked in a brown paste of Afghan dust and something darker, mud, maybe, or dried blood that got ground into the leather so deep it became part of the boot itself. Every step leaves a faint print on the wet sidewalk, like a trail of evidence he can't stop producing. He thinks about the neighborhood watch sign he passed 2 blocks back. "We report suspicious activity." He almost laughed. Almost. Because that's exactly what he is right now. Suspicious activity. A man in a torn field jacket and unlaced boots walking through a neighborhood of manicured hedges and motion sensor porch lights at 11:30 on a Tuesday night. He looks like something the war spit out, which, to be fair, is accurate. The wind picks up. It carries the smell of ozone and damp leaves and something faintly chemical, drier sheets, maybe, pumping out of someone's vent. It's such a civilian smell that it almost stops him in his tracks. Over there, everything smelled like diesel and dust and the sour tang of men who hadn't showered in weeks. Here, the air smells like fabric softener, like someone's doing laundry at midnight. Like the world kept spinning while he was gone and nobody thought to slow it down. He rounds the corner. And there it is. 1412 Maplecrest Lane, a 2-story colonial with blue shutters and a flagstone walkway and a porch light that Jenny always left on when he was deployed. She called it his lighthouse. "So you can always find your way back," she'd said, pressing her forehead against his chest the night before his last rotation. He'd kissed the top of her head and said something stupid like, "I'll always come back," and she'd punched his ribs and told him not to make promises he couldn't keep. The porch light is off. He stops, adjusts the cap in his hand, squeezes it, releases, squeezes again. But there's light inside. A warm, amber glow bleeding through the downstairs curtains, not the blue flicker of a television, not the flat white of overhead fixtures. Candlelight. The soft, deliberate glow of candles arranged with intention, the kind of light you set for a dinner you've been planning. Something shifts in his chest. A tightening, not pain exactly. More like a wire being drawn taut between his ribs, vibrating at a frequency only he can hear. He moves closer. The flagstone walkway is slick with rain, and on the 3rd step his boot catches the edge of a loose paver, the same one he's been meaning to fix for 2 years, and he stumbles forward, catching himself with one hand on the wet grass. His knee hits stone. A jolt of pain shoots up his thigh. He stays there for a moment on one knee in his own front yard like a man proposing to a house that doesn't want him. He almost laughs again. Almost. He pushes himself up, wipes the mud on his pants. Doesn't matter, the pants are already a disaster. Everything about him is a disaster. He's been traveling for 31 hours. A military transport to Ramstein, then a cargo hop to Dover. Then a bus he caught with 3 other soldiers who didn't talk to each other because talking means acknowledging you're going home. And going home means being a person again. And being a person again is the hardest mission any of them have ever been given. He approaches the dining room window. The curtains are drawn, but there's a gap, maybe 2 inches, where the fabric doesn't quite meet the frame. Jenny always pulled them unevenly. He used to tease her about it. "You had one job," he'd say, and she'd throw a cushion at his head. He leans in. The dining room table, their dining room table, the oak one they found at that estate sale in Fredericksburg, the one with the cigarette burn on the corner that they covered with a placemat, is set for 2. 2 plates. White porcelain with the thin silver rim, the good plates. The ones she kept in the high cabinet and only brought down for anniversaries, and the one time her mother visited from Tampa. 2 crystal glasses, wine glasses, catching the candlelight and throwing tiny rainbows against the wall. Silver cutlery laid out with geometric precision. Fork on the left, knife and spoon on the right, cloth napkin folded into a triangle on each plate. A centerpiece of fresh flowers, white lilies, and something purple he doesn't know the name of arranged in a vase he's never seen before. It looks like a restaurant. No, it looks like a set. Like someone dressed a stage for a scene in a movie about a life he used to own. He pulls back from the window. His hand finds the cap again, squeezes. There's a rational explanation. There's always a rational explanation. Maybe she's having a friend over. Maybe it's her sister, Colleen, who visits sometimes when he's deployed. Maybe she set the table early for some dinner party this weekend and forgot to clear it. Maybe she's celebrating something, a promotion, a birthday he forgot, some milestone in a life that kept going while his was frozen in a mountain range 8,000 miles away. But 2 glasses, 2 plates, and the porch light is off. He circles toward the back of the house. The grass is overgrown, not badly, but enough that he notices. He used to mow every Saturday. He had a system, diagonal stripes, alternating directions each week. The lawn looks like it hasn't been touched in a month. Maybe 2. The side gate is unlatched. He slips through, muscle memory guiding him around the recycling bins and the stack of terracotta pots Jenny always meant to plant herbs in. The backyard is dark, and the old maple, the one that drops leaves into the gutters every October, is bare and skeletal against the cloudy sky. He reaches the kitchen window. This one has no curtains, just the half-blind they installed 3 summers ago. It's raised about 6 inches. He looks in. The kitchen is clean, immaculate actually. Counters wiped, dishes done, the stovetop gleaming under the under-cabinet lights. A pot sits on the back burner with the lid slightly ajar, steam no longer rising. Whatever was cooked is finished. On the island, there's an open bottle of wine, red, good label, not the cheap stuff they usually drink, and a wooden cutting board with a few stray herbs scattered across it. Rosemary. He can almost smell it through the glass. Everything is in order, everything is beautiful, and that's what's wrong. Because Jenny is a hurricane in the kitchen. She cooks like a drummer, fast, loud, messy. Flour on the counter, sauce splattered on the backsplash, 3 spoons in the sink because she keeps forgetting which one she was using. The kitchen after Jenny cooks looks like a crime scene. This kitchen looks like it was cleaned for an inspection. His jaw tightens. He pulls back from the window and presses his spine against the brick wall. The cold bites through his jacket. He tilts his head up and stares at the sky, which is a flat, starless gray, nothing like the skies over Nangarhar, where the stars were so thick they looked fake, like someone spilled glitter on black velvet. He brings the wool cap to his face and breathes into it. The fabric smells like dust and sweat and the faintest trace of the aftershave he put on 6 weeks ago in another lifetime. It grounds him. Barely. Upstairs, a light turns on. 2nd floor, the bedroom window, he hears something. Laughter, Jenny's laughter. He knows that sound the way a dog knows its owner's car engine, not by analysis, but by something deeper, something coded into the base of his brain. That bright, hiccuping laugh she does when she's genuinely delighted, the one that makes her nose scrunch and her eyes disappear. She's laughing, and it's real. He can tell. That's not her polite laugh, the one she uses at unit functions when some colonel's wife tells a bad joke. That's her real laugh. The one she used to save for him. And then a voice. Low, male, not loud enough to make out words, but enough to feel the register. A baritone hum like distant thunder. She laughs again. He closes his eyes. The wire between his ribs pulls tighter. He stands there in the dark behind his own house, holding his wool cap like a man holding a rosary, and he listens to his wife laugh with someone else. Not sex. He could handle sex, maybe. Sex is mechanical. Sex is bodies doing what bodies do. But this easy, rolling joy, this sound of 2 people enjoying each other's company on a candlelit Tuesday night, this is worse. This is intimacy. This is the thing he went to war to protect, happening without him, happening instead of him. He's been replaced, not in the bed, in the conversation, in the kitchen, in the space between the 2nd glass of wine and the good night, in all the places that actually matter. His hand squeezes the cap so hard his knuckles crack. He wants to go inside. He wants to kick the door in and climb those stairs and stand in the bedroom doorway and say, I'm home. He wants to see her face. He wants to see his face. He wants to know. But he doesn't move. Because there's a part of him, the part that has been trained to assess threats and calculate odds and make cold, binary decisions in fractions of seconds, that already knows. Already knew before he rounded the corner, already knew when the porch light was off, already knew when he saw the crystal glasses and the silver cutlery and the white lilies. You don't set a table like that for someone you're just sleeping with. You set a table like that for someone you're falling in love with. He turns away from the house. He adjusts the cap on his head, pulling it low over his ears. And he stands in the backyard of the life he used to have, feeling exactly like what he is, a beggar staring through the window at someone else's feast. He should leave. That's what the rational part of his brain is screaming. The tactical side, the operator's mind that has kept him alive through 4 rotations and 11 direct engagements and one 17-hour stretch in a hole so small he couldn't straighten his legs. That voice says, pull back, reassess, you don't have enough intel. You are emotionally compromised, physically exhausted, and operating on 31 hours without real sleep. This is how mistakes happen. This is how people die. But he doesn't leave. Instead, Brian Barrows walks around to the front of the house, climbs the 3 porch steps, carefully this time, avoiding the loose paver, and tries the door. Locked. He almost knocks. His fist actually rises, hovers there in front of the dark green wood for 3 full seconds. Then he lowers it, because knocking means announcing. Knocking means giving them time. Time to straighten clothes, fix hair, compose a story. And he doesn't want a story. He wants the truth, caught raw and bleeding. The spare key used to live under a ceramic frog by the garden hose. It's still there. He slides it into the deadbolt. It turns with a click that sounds louder than any gunshot he's ever heard. The door swings open, and the smell hits him, beef stroganoff, his dish, the one he requested every time he came home. Jenny's recipe, not her mother's, not from a cookbook, but the one she invented during their first winter in this house, when they were broke, and the heating was broken, and she made it with cheap cuts and leftover sour cream, and he told her it was the best thing he'd ever tasted. She'd rolled her eyes and said, "You've been eating MREs for 6 months, you'd call cardboard delicious." And he'd said, "I'd call you delicious." And she'd hit him with a wooden spoon, and they'd ended up on the kitchen floor, and the stroganoff had burned, and they didn't care. That smell should feel like home. It doesn't. Mixed with the sweat still trapped under his collar, the residual dust in his nostrils, and the acid burn of something ugly rising in his stomach, the smell of his favorite meal makes him want to throw up. His mouth fills with saliva, not the hungry kind, the pre-vomit kind, and he swallows hard once, twice, breathing through his teeth until the wave passes. The hallway is dark. Not completely, a slice of warm light bleeds in from the dining room to the left, and the upstairs landing glows faintly from whatever room she's in. But the hallway itself is shadow, and shadow is where he's comfortable. Shadow is where he works. He steps inside. His boots are quiet on the hardwood, a trick of weight distribution he doesn't even think about anymore, rolling from heel to toe, keeping the sound footprint minimal. Force of habit. The habit of a man whose job is to enter places he doesn't belong and leave before anyone knows he was there. The irony is not lost on him. He's breaking into his own house. He eases the door shut behind him. Stands still, listens. Upstairs, the murmur of conversation, still just below the threshold of intelligibility. Words that blend into a rhythm, her voice rising and falling, his voice a low counterpoint. The cadence of people who are comfortable with each other. No pauses, no awkward gaps, the conversational equivalent of a duet. He turns to the hallway closet. The door is open. The light is off, but he can see well enough in the dark, another professional perk. Another piece of evidence that he's more suited to nighttime operations than to civilian life. His eyes adjust in seconds. And there they are, the boots, military boots, but not like his. His are scuffed, cracked, held together in places by habit and dried mud. The leather is so worn that the original color is a guess. These boots, sitting neatly on the shoe rack, toes pointed forward like soldiers at attention, are polished to a mirror shine. Not a scratch, not a speck of dust. The kind of boots that have never touched dirt, never been anywhere more hostile than a Pentagon hallway. Dress boots, officer's boots. The boots of a man who fights wars from behind a desk. Next to them, a coat, Hung carefully on the hook, Jenny's hook, the one she assigned years ago with a label maker she bought in a phase of domestic organization that lasted exactly 3 weeks. The coat is heavy, dark, impeccable. He reaches out and touches it. High-quality wool, dense weave. His fingers find the shoulder, and even in the dark he can feel the insignia. 2 stars, a major general. His hand pulls back like the wool burned him. He stands there breathing in and out, slow, controlled. The way they taught him during resistance training, the kind of breathing you do when you're tied to a chair and someone is asking you questions you don't want to answer. In for 4. Hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4, a general in his house. Wearing a coat that costs more than Barrows makes in a month, eating his wife's stroganoff, drinking wine from his crystal glasses, using his silver cutlery, laughing his wife's real laugh, he looks down. On the floor of the closet, half hidden beneath the coat's hem, there's a pair of slippers. He crouches, picks one up. The material is soft velvet or something close to it, dark burgundy. Monogrammed, though he can't make out the initials in this light. The sole is leather, unworn. The kind of slipper you'd find in a catalog for things no one actually needs. He puts it down. Slowly, something about the slipper disgusts him more than the coat. The boots are military, he can place them in a context. The coat is functional even if it's expensive, but the slippers are comfort. They're a man making himself at home. They're a man who padded across his floors, sat in his chairs, stood in his kitchen watching his wife cook. They're a man who didn't just visit, he settled in. Barrows's jaw is clenched so tight he can feel the muscles jumping under his ears. He stands, moves into the dining room. The table is even more staged than it looked from outside. Close up, the candlelight plays across every surface, catching the crystal, warming the porcelain, turning the silver into strips of liquid gold. The flowers, white lilies, and the purple ones are irises, he realizes now are fresh. Cut today, maybe this morning. There's still a faint green sap smell mixed with the floral sweetness. 2 plates, both used. The remnants of stroganoff smeared across white porcelain, a streak of sour cream here, a stray noodle there. 2 wine glasses, both with ruby half-moons low on the bowl. They've been drinking for a while. The bottle on the table is 2/3 empty. He picks it up, tilts the label toward the candle. A 2016 Chateauneuf du Pape. $70, maybe $80 a bottle. Jenny usually drinks the $12 Merlot from the grocery store and pretends it's fancy by pouring it into a decanter. He puts the bottle down. 2 chairs pulled close, not across from each other, adjacent at the corner of the table. The intimate configuration. The one that says, I want to be near you, not the arrangement of a business dinner or a friendly catch-up. This is how you sit when you want your knee to touch someone's knee under the table. There's a napkin on the floor beside one chair. It must have slipped off a lap. He picks it up without thinking, old instinct, Jenny's voice in his head saying we don't live in a barracks, Brian, and the fabric is warm. Recently used. He holds it for a moment, then drops it on the table like a dead thing. He moves back toward the stairs. The staircase is carpeted beige, the color they argued about. It's sand, Jenny insisted, and he'd said, sand is what I get in my boots, this is beige. And it muffles his footsteps completely. He ascends slowly, one hand on the railing, the other still gripping the cap. The wallpaper along the stairwell is the same, a subtle floral pattern Jenny chose, which he secretly hated but never mentioned because she'd been so excited about it. Photos line the wall. He doesn't look at them. He can't. Not right now. He knows what's there, their wedding in the courthouse, both of them laughing because the judge sneezed during the vows. Him in dress uniform at his commissioning. The 2 of them at Virginia Beach, sunburned and stupid and young. A version of life that exists only in frames now. He reaches the landing. The bedroom door is open. Light pours out, warm and golden, the bedside lamp, the one with the amber shade she found at a thrift store in Alexandria. And her voice is clear now. And I told her, I said, Linda, you cannot bring that casserole to every single event. And she looked at me like I'd insulted her firstborn child. She's telling a story. An ordinary story about an ordinary woman and an ordinary casserole. And she's telling it with the kind of animated energy she used to bring to their late-night talks, the 2 of them in bed, her head on his chest, her hands conducting invisible orchestras as she recounted her day. Then the man's voice. Closer now, clear enough to catch tone if not words. A chuckle. Low, warm, genuine. A sound of enjoyment, of attention. And then Jenny says something that stops Barrows cold. "Oh, Honeybear, you should have seen her face." Honeybear. The word goes through him like a round. Honeybear, that was his. That was the name she gave him on their second date when he'd eaten an entire jar of honey from the charcuterie board and she'd laughed so hard she spilled her drink. It was private, stupid and private and theirs. She called him that in bed, in whispered phone calls during deployment, in the little notes she tucked into his gear. "Come home safe, Honeybear, I love you," and she just gave it to someone else. Handed it out like spare change. Pressed it against another man's ear with the same mouth that pressed it against his. The wire between his ribs doesn't tighten this time. It snaps. His vision narrows. His breath goes shallow and fast, not panic, something colder, something closer to the tunnel focus he gets behind a scope. The hallway light seems to dim at the edges. His hands are shaking and the cap is being crushed into a tight ball of wool and sweat. He takes one step toward the bedroom, then stops. Because through the doorway, past the edge of the dresser, reflected in the mirror Jenny keeps on the wall opposite the bed, he catches a fragment, a shape. A man's shoulder in a white undershirt, an arm draped casually across what? A pillow, a headboard, a lap. He can't see the face. The angle is wrong, or the light is wrong, or something is wrong, and the face is just not there. A blur of shadow where features should be. It doesn't matter. He's seen enough. He backs away. One step, two steps, silent on the beige sand carpet. His operational training takes over completely now, and he descends the staircase like a ghost, weight on the balls of his feet, breathing through his nose, making no more noise than the house itself. He passes through the hallway. Past the closet with the polished boots and the velvet slippers and the two-star coat. Past the dining room with its candlelit stage set and its $70 wine. Past the kitchen where his favorite meal was cooked for someone who isn't him. He reaches the front door, opens it, steps outside, closes it behind him with a click that sounds like the period at the end of a sentence. The cold hits him again, harder this time because whatever warmth the house held, physical, emotional, imagined, is gone now. The wind pushes against his chest like a hand telling him to go, just go, and for once he listens. He walks, then jogs, then runs. His boots slap the wet sidewalk, leaving prints in the puddles that glow briefly under the streetlights before dissolving. The duffel bangs against his hip. The cap is still in his fist. He passes dark houses and sleeping cars and a mailbox shaped like a fish that he's always hated, and he runs without direction, without destination, just away. He makes it 4 blocks before his legs give out. Not from exhaustion, though he's exhausted, God. He's so tired his bones feel hollow, but from something else. Something structural, like the framework that holds him upright, just decided to quit. He drops to his knees on someone's front lawn. The grass is cold and wet and his hands sink into the soft earth, and he stays there on all fours like an animal. His breath comes in ragged bursts. His stomach heaves and this time he can't stop it. He vomits into the grass, tasting stroganoff and bile and the metallic tang of exhaustion. It's not even his stroganoff. It's the ghost of the smell converted into acid. He wipes his mouth with the back of his hand. And he thinks, I don't even own this lawn. He doesn't own any of it. Not the house, not the table, not the wife, not the name. He gave it all up when he shipped out. He signed it over to Uncle Sam and told himself it would be there when he got back, because that's what they all tell themselves every single time, and every single time some of them come home to exactly this. He sits back on his heels, pulls the cap over his head low, past his eyebrows, until the world is reduced to a strip of wet street and dark sky. A porch light flickers on across the street. Someone's motion sensor triggered by a cat or a raccoon or the wind. It casts a yellow cone that reaches almost to where he's kneeling. Almost, but not quite. He's outside the light. Of course he is. He stays there for a long time. Long enough for the cold to stop being uncomfortable and start being something else. A numbness that begins in his fingers and toes and spreads inward, as if his body is shutting down the outlying provinces to protect the capital. Long enough for his breathing to slow, for his heartbeat to find something approaching a normal rhythm. When he finally stands, his knees crack loud enough to make a dog bark somewhere down the block. He picks up the duffel, adjusts the cap. He doesn't go back to the house. He walks into the dark. Away from Maplecrest Lane, away from the candlelight and the crystal and the laughter and the word that used to be his. He walks with the steady, ground-eating pace of a man who has covered many miles in hostile territory, and he does not look back. The night swallows him whole. And somewhere behind him, in a warm bedroom with an amber light, Jenny Barrows says something that makes a man with no face laugh, and neither of them knows that a ghost just passed through their house and left nothing but boot prints on the hallway floor and a key under a ceramic frog that will never be used again. 2 weeks earlier, Nangarhar Province, Afghanistan. The hideout smells like 3 men who haven't bathed in 9 days. It's not a dramatic smell, not the sharp chemical stink you'd expect from a war movie. It's worse than that. It's domestic. It smells like a gym bag left in a hot car for a week, mixed with the sour tang of breath that comes from drinking the same warm, plasticky water out of the same canteen for days on end. It smells like feet and armpits and the particular musk that collects in the creases of a man's neck when he sleeps in the same position for too long. It smells, as specialist Tomas Phillips puts it every single morning, like God's armpit. "I'm just saying," Phillips says, adjusting the ghillie netting over his observation scope for the 14th time, "if you account for inflation, $20 in 2019 is like $23 now. So technically you owe me 23. Sergeant First Class Diego Ramirez doesn't look up from the rifle he's cleaning. "I don't owe you anything. You literally said, and I quote, 'I'll pay you back at Bagram.' We were at Bagram for 6 days. 6 days, Raymai. You bought a $4 smoothie at the PX. You had money. You made a choice. The choice was a smoothie. Overpaying your debt. Overpaying you." Barrows sits against the back wall of the hide, a shallow depression they've carved into the mountainside and reinforced with rocks, and a sheet of corrugated tin they found in a bombed-out village 3 clicks south. The space is roughly the size of a king mattress. 3 men, their gear, their weapons, and 9 days of accumulated filth, all stuffed into a coffin with a view. He's been listening to this argument for 2 days. "Captain," Phillips says, turning to Barrows with the wounded expression of a man seeking justice, "tell him he owes me." Barrows takes a sip from his canteen. The water is warm and tastes like the inside of a plastic bottle, a flavor he's come to associate with every deployment, a flavor that will probably make him gag at a backyard barbecue someday. "I'm not getting involved. You're our commanding officer. I'm your commanding officer in matters of tactical significance. A $20 debt is not tactically significant." 23, Phillips corrects. "Inflation. That's not how debt works," Ramirez says quietly, pulling a cleaning rod through the barrel of his SR-25. His hands move with the careful, unhurried precision of a man who treats his weapon the way a violinist treats a Stradivarius. "The amount is fixed at the time of the agreement." Phillips stares at him. "Since when are you a financial analyst? Since when are you worth $20? Barrows almost smiles. Almost. His face doesn't cooperate much these days. 9 days in a hole will do that. The muscles around his mouth seem to have forgotten their job, replaced by a permanent clench in his jaw that makes his molars ache. He adjusts the wool cap on his head, pulling it down over his ears. The fabric is damp with sweat, but the pressure against his skull is grounding. Familiar. The one constant in a place where nothing else is. The local robes they're wearing over their gear itch like fire. The fabric is coarse, woven from something that feels like burlap's angrier cousin, and it traps heat against the body in a way that seems designed to maximize discomfort. Barrows has a rash along his collarbone that he's been trying not to scratch for 3 days. He lost that battle around day 7. "What time is it?" Phillips asks. "Same as the last time you asked, plus 10 minutes. "I wasn't asking you, Raymai. And yet," Barrows checks his watch. 14:20. Phillips groans and rolls onto his back, staring at the corrugated tin sealing 6 inches from his nose. A beetle is making its way across the metal, tiny legs clicking against the ridges. "You know what I could eat right now? A cheesesteak. Not a good one. I don't even need a good one. I need a gas station cheesesteak. The kind where the cheese is orange and the bread is damp and you hate yourself after." "That's very specific," Barrows says. "I've had 9 days to think about it. I've refined my desires. I know exactly what I want, and it's mediocre processed food." Ramirez snaps the bolt back into place. "I want my mother's enchiladas." "See, that's too emotional. I'm talking about pure, joyless sustenance." "Everything with you is joyless." "That's because I'm owed $23 and nobody cares." The radio on Barrow's hip crackles. He holds up a fist, the universal signal for shut up, and both men go silent instantly. The transition is remarkable. 1 second they're bickering like roommates arguing over a utility bill, and the next they're operators, still and focused, eyes hard, breathing controlled. The switch takes less than a heartbeat. Barrows keys the radio. "Warhorse 6, send it." The voice on the other end is Lieutenant Colonel Hadley, their handler at the forward operating base, 32 miles southeast. His voice is clipped and efficient, the voice of a man who has never been uncomfortable in his life and schedules his bathroom breaks. "Warhorse 6, we have updated SIGINT on the thumb, confirming primary target Al-Nazir is still on site. Prayer schedule holds. Window is tomorrow, 0515 local. Copy, rules of engagement. Unchanged, single target. Collateral authorization, 0. Understood, what about the garrison numbers? Last count was 6. A pause, the kind of pause that means someone is choosing their words carefully. "SIGINT is showing increased activity, possibly up to company strength." Barrows looks at Ramirez. Ramirez looks at Phillips. Phillips mouths a word that isn't appropriate for anyone's mother. "Say again, Warhorse, company strength." "We were briefed on a 6-man security detail. Intel is being reassessed. Current estimate is 40 to 60 personnel within the cave system, possibly more. Possibly more." "Affirmative." Barrows closes his eyes. Company strength. 40 to 60 fighters in a cave network they've been watching for 9 days, a network they'd been told housed one high-value target and a handful of bodyguards. The difference between 6 men and 60 isn't a rounding error. It's the difference between a surgical strike and a suicide mission. "Is the mission still green?" he asks, though he already knows the answer. "Mission is green. Al-Nazir is priority 1, national-level asset. The window is the window, Captain." The window is the window, Hadley's favorite phrase. Translation, I don't care about your problems, the schedule is the schedule. "Copy, Warhorse, Warhorse 6 out." He sets the radio down. The hide is silent for a long moment. The beetle on the ceiling has stopped moving, as if it's also processing the information. "Company strength," Phillips says flatly. "You heard the man." "I heard a man sitting in an air-conditioned TOC 30 miles away tell 3 guys in a hole that the target they were told would be guarded by 6 dudes is actually guarded by 60 dudes, and the mission is still a go." He pauses. "With respect, sir, that's insane. It's the mission. The mission was based on intelligence that turned out to be garbage." "Intel is always garbage," Ramirez says, slotting a magazine into the SR-25 with a soft click. "That's why they call it intelligence, it's aspirational." Phillips doesn't laugh. He's staring at Barrows with an expression that's halfway between trust and terror. "Cap, seriously, what's the play?" Barrows reaches for his canteen, takes a sip. The warm, plastic taste fills his mouth. He thinks about the cave system. The Thumb of Allah, named for its shape on the thermal imaging, a main chamber with 4 branching tunnels that look like fingers curling inward. He thinks about the route they've mapped. A 1,200-meter crawl along a ridgeline to the observation point, then a 700-meter shot down into the valley where the cave mouth opens. He thinks about the exfil, 3 clicks uphill to the extraction point, mostly scree and loose shale, the kind of terrain that eats ankles. He thinks about 40 to 60 fighters hearing a rifle shot echo through a canyon. "The play is the same," he says. "Ramirez takes the shot, I spot. Phillips covers the exfil route. Al-Nazir goes down and we move, fast. And the 60 guys. They won't know where the shot came from, not immediately. Sound bounces in that canyon, they'll have 5, maybe 6 seconds of confusion. That's our window. 6 seconds. That's a lifetime." Phillips looks at Ramirez. "You hearing this?" Ramirez shrugs. He actually shrugs. "I've had worse odds." When have you ever had worse odds?" Ramirez thinks about it. "That time in Fallujah." "You weren't in Fallujah." "No, but if I had been, the odds would have been worse." Phillips drops his head into his hands. "I'm going to die with a comedian." "You're not going to die," Barrows says, and he means it. Not because he's certain. Certainty is a luxury that doesn't exist in this line of work, but because saying it is part of the job of being the man in charge. The man who absorbs everyone else's fear and converts it into something that looks like confidence. "Get some rest," he says. "We move at 0300. Phillips nods. Ramirez nods. Neither of them sleeps. Barrows pulls the cap lower over his eyes and leans his head back against the rock wall. The stone is cold through the wool. Above them, the Afghan stars are absurd, thick clusters of white scattered across a sky so dark it looks purple. Back home, you can see maybe a dozen stars on a clear night. Here, there are thousands, millions, an embarrassment of stars as if the universe is showing off. He doesn't make a wish. Wishing is for people who believe the universe is listening. Instead, he does what he always does before a mission. He thinks about Jenny, her laugh, the way she folds laundry aggressively like the towels owe her money. The sound of her singing off-key in the shower, always the same song, that old Fleetwood Mac track she won't admit she loves. He holds that image the way he holds his cap. Tight, too tight. Then he lets it go, files it away. Locks the drawer. Tomorrow he needs to be a weapon. Weapons don't have wives. Oh, 300. The world is black. They move out of the hide in single file, Barrows on point, Ramirez in the middle with the SR-25 cradled across his chest, Phillips bringing up the rear with the spotting scope and the pack. The air has that pre-dawn cold that isn't just temperature but texture, a crystalline sharpness that coats the inside of your throat like menthol. Each breath leaves the mouth as a ghost that dissolves before it travels 6 inches. Nobody speaks. Communication is hand signals and head tilts, a language they've spoken so long it's faster than words. Barrows raises a fist. Stop. He extends 2 fingers forward. Move. He taps his ear. Listen. It's a dialect built from 100 operations, refined through repetition until it's as natural as blinking. The ridgeline is narrow. In places, it's less than 3 feet wide, a spine of rock with a drop on both sides that Barrows doesn't look at because looking at it won't help. The footing is loose gravel over harder stone, the kind of surface that shifts under your weight like it's trying to decide whether to hold you or dump you. He tests each step before committing, placing his boot like a chess piece, feeling for stability before transferring his weight. Behind him, Ramirez moves with the eerie grace of a man who was born in the wrong century. He should have been a cat burglar or a tightrope walker, someone whose profession rewards an almost supernatural sense of balance. He hasn't made a sound in 40 minutes. Phillips, by contrast, sounds like a man dragging a refrigerator through a gravel pit. He's trying, but the pack is heavy and his boots keep finding the one loose rock in every square meter. Every scrape makes Barrows' shoulders tense. It's not Phillips' fault. He's a spotter, not an infiltrator. His job starts when they're in position. Getting there is just the commute from hell. They reach the observation point at 0440, 5 minutes ahead of schedule. The position is a natural depression in the ridgeline, a shallow bowl of rock that offers a direct line of sight down into the valley, 700 meters to the cave mouth. Barrows selected it 6 days ago during the first night of reconnaissance, and they've been watching it through the scope every day since, tracking patrol patterns, guard rotations, prayer times. The cave mouth is a dark oval cut into the cliff face, ringed by a flat area where the fighters gather for morning prayers. That flat area is the kill zone. Ramirez settles into position. He moves with the deliberate calm of a man assembling something precise. Bipod down, stock against shoulder, cheek against rest. His breathing slows. His eyes go soft, then hard, then soft again as he calibrates the scope. Barrows lies beside him with the spotting scope, their shoulders almost touching. At this distance, in this position, they're so close he can hear Ramirez's heartbeat, or maybe that's his own. After a while, they merge. Phillips takes the rear position, angled to cover the exfil route. He pulls a camouflage net over his position and becomes part of the mountain. They wait. Waiting is the worst part. Not the danger, not the cold, not the physical discomfort, the waiting. Time doesn't pass normally on a sniper operation. Minutes stretch into elastic, rubbery things that refuse to snap. Barrows watches the cave mouth through the scope and counts his breaths, because counting breaths is better than counting seconds. And counting seconds is better than thinking about what happens if this goes wrong. At 0508 movement, 2 fighters emerge from the cave mouth carrying prayer rugs. They move with the slow, stiff gait of men who have been sleeping on stone. One of them yawns, a wide, jaw-cracking yawn that Barrows can see clearly through the 20x magnification. A human yawn. For a fraction of a second, the man isn't a target. He's just a guy who didn't sleep well. Then more emerge. 3, 5, 8, they lay the rugs in rows facing west. The murmur of voices carries faintly up the valley, distorted by distance into something that sounds like water running over stones. "Lot of bodies," Phillips whispers from behind them. He's counting through his own scope. "I got 14, 18, 22 visible, more inside." Barrows doesn't respond. His attention is locked on the cave mouth. Al-Nazir hasn't appeared yet. The intelligence says he leads the morning prayer. Every day, without fail. "Windage," Ramirez murmurs. His voice is barely a vibration. Barrows checks the indicators, the flags of fabric tied to rocks along the valley floor, the drift of dust, the angle of the thin smoke rising from a cooking fire near the cave entrance. Left to right 3 to 5 knots, consistent. Range. 718, elevation. -14 degrees, downhill correction applied. Parallax. Barrows fine-tunes the spotting scope. At this distance, parallax, the optical illusion that shifts the reticle off-target when your eye isn't perfectly aligned, can mean the difference between a clean kill and an international incident. Clear. Copy. Ramirez's breathing drops to a rhythm Barrows can feel through the ground. In, hold, out, hold, 4 seconds per cycle. His heart rate is probably in the low 50s. The man is a machine disguised as a human being. 0513. A figure emerges from the cave. He's taller than the others, thinner. He wears white, a long, clean garment that catches the first gray light of pre-dawn like a flag. His beard is dark and pointed. He walks with the careful authority of a man who knows he is watched, even by his own people. He raises his hands, palms up, and the murmuring stops. "Confirm target," Ramirez says. Barrows compares the face in his scope to the photograph taped to the inside of his wrist guard. High forehead, deep-set eyes, scar on the left jaw running from ear to chin. The photograph is 3 years old, taken from a drone at 8,000 feet, grainy and overexposed, but the scar is unmistakable. Target confirmed, Al-Nazir. The fighters arrange themselves behind him. 26 visible. Probably more inside the cave. Al-Nazir lowers his hands and bows his head. He begins to pray. "Send it," Barrows says. 3 things happen in the next 1.4 seconds. First, Ramirez's finger completes a trigger pull so gentle it barely qualifies as movement. It's not a squeeze, it's a permission. The rifle speaks. Not the dramatic boom of a movie gunshot, but a flat, hard crack that splits the air and echoes off the canyon walls in a cascade of diminishing reports. Second, the bullet crosses 718 meters of thin mountain air. Through the spotting scope, Barrows can track its path, not the bullet itself, but the disturbance it leaves behind. A faint shimmer like heat haze, a corridor of displaced air that connects the rifle to the target in a line so straight it looks artificial. The bullet trace. Some snipers call it the thread. Others call it God's finger. Third, Al-Nazir's head moves, not dramatically, not the explosive, cinematic spray that the movies promise. His head simply jerks. A sharp, lateral snap, as if someone yanked an invisible string attached to his temple. His body follows a half-second later, folding sideways onto the prayer rug with a boneless quality that means the nervous system has already disconnected. From 700 meters away through the scope, Barrows hears it, or imagines he hears it. It's hard to tell at this distance. A sound like a wet palm slapping a wooden table. A meaty slap, nothing more. Al-Nazir is dead before his shoulder hits the ground. The prayer continues for almost 2 full seconds. The man kneeling directly behind Al-Nazir hasn't noticed. His eyes are closed. His lips are moving. He is talking to God while the man in front of him leaks into the dust. Then someone screams. "Time," Barrows says. They've rehearsed this. 1001, 1002, 1003, that's the confusion window. The time it takes for 50-plus men to process the fact that their leader just dropped, to look around, to look up, to start pointing and shouting and trying to figure out where the shot came from. "Moving," Ramirez says, already collapsing the bipod. Below in the valley, chaos unfolds in slow motion through the scope. Men are running, but they're running in circles. 2 of them are crouching over Al-Nazir's body. One is pointing east, wrong direction. Another is pointing straight up, as if the bullet came from the sky. Barrows doesn't feel triumph. He doesn't feel satisfaction, or justice, or any of the clean emotions that are supposed to accompany the elimination of a man responsible for the deaths of 37 coalition soldiers and an unknown number of civilians. What he feels is relief that he can finally move his legs. He's been lying in the same position for 2 hours and 14 minutes. His left hip has gone numb. His right knee is locked. There's a rock the size of a walnut that has been pressing into his bladder since 0450, and the removal of that pressure, the simple act of rolling sideways and pulling his knees under him, produces a wave of physical pleasure so intense it's almost embarrassing. "Ex-Phil," he says. "Now, Phillips, take point." They move. Behind them, the canyon erupts. Gunfire not aimed, not directed, just the reactive, furious noise of men shooting at shadows and echoes and their own fear. Rounds snap off the ridgeline 50 meters to the south. Nowhere close, but the sound travels, and sound is a clock that's ticking. 5 seconds of confusion, Phillips mutters as they scramble along the ridge. "You said 6. Math was never my best subject." Comforting, they run. The ridgeline narrows and then widens into a scree-filled loose shale that slides underfoot like broken plates. The Ex-Phil route is 3 kilometers uphill, northwest, to a landing zone on a plateau where a helicopter will or will not be waiting in 45 minutes. The will or will not part is what keeps things interesting. Barrows takes a last look through the spotting scope. The valley below is a kicked anthill. Men pouring from the cave mouth, weapons up, spreading out in search patterns that are more panic than procedure. 6 seconds of confusion. They got 5, close enough to live. Maybe, 12 minutes into the Ex-Phil, they're ahead of schedule and moving clean. The scree field gives way to harder ground, packed earth, and scrub brush. The kind of terrain that takes a boot print without complaint and doesn't shift under your weight. Phillips is setting a strong pace on point, his long legs eating up the slope with a mechanical rhythm. Ramirez is 3 meters behind, rifle slung, moving with that infuriating smoothness. Barrows covers the rear, scanning back down the slope every 30 seconds, looking for movement, dust, the glint of glass or metal. Nothing. The mountain is empty behind them. "I think we're clear," Phillips says over his shoulder, breathing hard but controlled. Barrows doesn't answer. Clear is a word that gets people killed. Clear is a word you say when you're standing in a room with no corners. On a mountain in Nangarhar with 60 fighters behind you who just lost their leader, clear doesn't exist. "Don't say that," Ramirez says, because Ramirez also knows. "I'm just saying, don't say." Phillips shuts up. He keeps moving. 13 minutes, 14. The slope steepens, and the terrain transitions back into loose shale, a field of flat gray stones that tilt and slide like stacked coins. Each step requires a negotiation. Plant the foot, feel the shift, adjust, commit. It's exhausting. Not the explosive exhaustion of a sprint, but the grinding, cumulative exhaustion of sustained effort against a surface that actively resists you. 15 minutes. They're halfway to the LZ. That's when the shot comes, not from behind, from the left, from a position on the adjacent ridgeline that they scouted 5 days ago and classified as unoccupied. The round passes between Barrows and Ramirez with a sound like ripping silk, that high, thin crack that means the bullet was close enough to leave a bruise on the air. Contact left. Barrows drops to the shale, scanning through his scope. The adjacent ridge is 300 meters away, separated by a gully that drops 40 feet. He sees nothing. No muzzle flash, no movement, just rock and scrub and the pale gray of pre-dawn. A second shot. This one hits the shale 2 feet from Phillips' boot, sending a spray of stone chips into the air. Phillips throws himself flat. "I don't have him," Ramirez says, already prone, rifle up, scanning the ridgeline through his scope. No visual. A third shot. And then a sound that Barrows will hear for the rest of his life. It's not a scream. Phillips doesn't scream. What comes out of him is a grunt, a short, hard expulsion of air, like someone punched him in the stomach, followed by a silence that's somehow worse than any sound could be. "Phillips!" "I'm," another grunt, then a hiss. Then words pushed through clenched teeth. "My ankle, my ankle!" Barrows crawls to him. The shale tears at his elbows and knees, but he doesn't feel it. He reaches Phillips in 4 seconds, and the first thing he sees is the boot. The boot is wrong. Not the boot itself, the angle. The foot inside it is pointing a direction that feet don't point. Not sideways, not backwards, but inward, rotated about 30 degrees past where anatomy allows, as if someone grabbed the heel and twisted. The laces are dark and wet, and for a moment Barrows thinks it's mud, but the wetness is spreading too fast and the color is too red for mud. "Don't look at it," Barrows says, which is useless advice because Phillips is already looking at it, and the color draining from his face is visible even in the gray half-light. Is it how bad? Don't look at it. Phillips looks at it. He vomits. A thin, acidic stream, mostly water and bile, because none of them have eaten anything solid since yesterday, that splashes against the shale and steams faintly in the cold air. His body convulses with the effort, and the convulsion moves his ankle, and the ankle makes a sound. A grinding, not crunching. Grinding. The slow, wet friction of bone edges moving against each other in a space where they aren't supposed to be. It sounds like someone twisting a mortar and pestle filled with gravel and raw meat. Ricochet, Ramirez says from his position. He's still scanning the opposite ridge, still looking for the shooter. Caught a rock fragment, spall damage. I don't care what it's called, Phillips gasps. I care that my foot is on sideways. Another shot cracks overhead, then another, then silence. He's displacing, Ramirez says. Changing position, we've got 60 seconds, maybe less. Barrows makes a decision. The kind of decision that doesn't involve thinking, it bypasses the brain entirely and comes from somewhere deeper, somewhere in the spinal cord where duty lives next to instinct. He grabs Phillips' pack and strips it off him. Then he grabs Phillips. This is going to hurt. It already, Barrows hauls him upright. The sound Phillips makes is barely human. It's a high, whistling keen that he chokes off by biting down on something, his own tongue, the collar of his robe. Barrows doesn't know and doesn't look. Phillips' left arm goes around Barrows' shoulders, and Barrows hooks his right arm under Phillips' armpit, and they begin to move. Raymai, cover and move, leapfrog, go. Ramirez fires 3 shots at the opposite ridge, suppressive, not aimed, just noise to make the shooter keep his head down, then scrambles 20 meters uphill. Stops, scans, fires again. Barrows drags Phillips. The scree field becomes a nightmare. Every step for Barrows is a calculation, plant, shift, hold, drag, and every step for Phillips is agony. His destroyed ankle bumps against stones, catches on ledges, swings with a pendular looseness that means the structural integrity is gone. Tendons, ligaments, maybe the joint itself, something fundamental has given way, and the foot is attached to the leg by muscle and skin and stubbornness and nothing else. Phillips is trying not to make noise. He's failing. Short, bitten-off sounds escape through his teeth, not screams, but the precursors to screams, the sounds a man makes when he's using every ounce of willpower to stay quiet and his body is overriding his mind. Talk to me, Barrows says, because silence from a wounded man is worse than screaming. Tell me something, tell me about the cheesesteak. What, the gas station cheesesteak? You were giving a whole speech about it. Keep going. Phillips takes a shuddering breath. Orange cheese. Yeah, what else? Damp bread. That's disgusting. Keep going. Onions fried, the kind that are translucent, he coughs. Not caramelized. Nobody wants caramelized onions on a cheesesteak. That's for people who went to culinary school and need everyone to know. Good, keep going. They cover 50 meters, 100. Ramirez leapfrogs past them, fires another burst, moves again. The shooter on the opposite ridge has gone quiet, maybe displaced, maybe flanking, maybe dead. Barrows doesn't care. He cares about the next step and the step after that and the LZ that's still 1.5 kilometers uphill. The slope steepens. The shale gives way to actual rock, exposed ledges and shelves that require climbing, not walking. Barrows has to push Phillips up each ledge, then pull himself up after. The physical effort is enormous. His legs burn. His arms burn. His lower back has locked into a knot that sends electric jolts down his left leg with every step. But he keeps moving, because that's what he does. That's what they all do. You move until you can't, and then you move some more because stopping means dying, and dying means someone has to write a letter to your wife, and Barrows doesn't have good enough handwriting for that. Cap, Phillips says. His voice is wrong, too quiet, too calm, the voice of a man whose body has started shutting down the pain to conserve energy. How much further? Close. How close? Close enough. That's not a distance. 1 click, maybe less. Ramirez, what's our position? Ramirez checks his GPS. 1,100 meters to the LZ, bearing 320. See, Barrows says, close. Phillips lets out a sound that might be a laugh. 1,100 meters uphill on scree, dragging a 200-pound man with a destroyed ankle. He pauses. Maybe God hates us. Maybe God hates you, Ramirez says from 20 meters ahead. I'm fine. They keep climbing, the five-legged race. That's what Barrows calls it later in the version of the story he never tells anyone. Two of his legs, one of Phillips, and two arms doing the work of the missing limb. 5 legs scrambling up a mountain in the gray light of an Afghan dawn, leaving a trail of blood on the shale that any tracker with half a brain could follow. The sky turns from black to purple to a pale, washed-out blue. Dawn in the Hindu Kush doesn't arrive, it seeps. Like dye in water, slow and irreversible. And with the light comes visibility, and with visibility comes vulnerability, and with vulnerability comes the sick, crawling awareness that they are 3 men on an open mountainside with no cover and no speed and a blood trail that glows crimson against the gray stone. Move, Barrows says. Move, move, move. They move. They reach the crest at 0551. The LZ is visible, a flat shelf of rock 200 meters below on the northwest slope, marked with an IR strobe that blinks silently in a frequency only night vision can see. The helicopter isn't there yet. It's supposed to arrive at 0600. 9 minutes. 9 minutes might as well be 9 years. Barrows lowers Phillips behind a cluster of boulders at the crest. Phillips' face is the color of old wax, yellowish, shiny with sweat despite the cold. His breathing is fast and shallow, the panting of a body that has been running on adrenaline and is reaching the bottom of the tank. The ankle has swollen to the point that the boot is stretched tight, leather straining against flesh that shouldn't be that size. The blood has slowed to a seep, which is either good or bad. Barrows doesn't know enough field medicine to tell. 9 minutes, Barrows says. That's it. 9 minutes and we're on a bird. Phillips nods. His eyes are glassy. He's somewhere between consciousness and shock, occupying that gray territory where the mind starts to float above the body to escape the pain. Ramirez drops into position beside them, rifle up, scanning the slope they just climbed. The morning light is brutal now. Every rock, every shadow, every feature of the mountainside is rendered in sharp, high-definition clarity. Movement, Ramirez says. Barrows doesn't need the scope. He can see them with his naked eyes, figures. Small, dark, moving fast along the ridgeline they abandoned 15 minutes ago. 8, 10, more behind them spread out in a loose line that covers the width of the ridge. They've been tracked, the blood trail. How many? Barrows asks. 15 visible, could be more in the dead ground. Phillips tries to sit up. Give me a weapon. You can't give me a weapon, Cap. I can shoot sitting down. Barrows unslings his M4 and places it across Phillips' lap. Phillips hands close around it with a grip that's pure muscle memory, and for a moment, just a moment, his eyes clear. He's a soldier again, not a wounded man, not a liability, not a 200-pound anchor dragging his team toward death. A soldier. Raymai, Barrows says, can you slow them down? At this range, the fighters are 600 meters out, give or take, moving along the ridge in a loose file. I can make them think about their life choices. Do it. Ramirez settles behind the SR-25, takes a breath, fires. 600 meters down the mountain, a man stumbles. He doesn't fall dramatically, he just stops working. His legs tangle and he goes down in a heap, and the men around him scatter like roaches when a light clicks on. Ramirez fires again. Another man drops. The rest of them are behind cover now, crouched behind boulders and ledges, invisible. That bought us a minute, Ramirez says. Maybe 2, they'll flank. He's right. Barrows can already see it, a group of 4 breaking left, using the gully between the ridgelines as cover, moving to get around the crest and above them. Another group is pushing straight, crawling forward from rock to rock. Textbook. These aren't amateurs. 5 minutes to the helicopter, if it's on time, if it comes at all. Ramirez fires again. Misses. The range is closing, but the targets are disciplined now, short rushes, good cover selection, overlapping movement. Whoever trained these men knew what they were doing. 4 minutes. The first burst of return fire comes from the gully. Rounds crack off the boulders, sending chips of stone flying. Barrows ducks. Phillips doesn't. He's already sighting down the M4, his injured leg extended at an angle that makes Barrows' stomach turn. I see them, Phillips says and fires. 3-round burst. Got one, maybe. 3 minutes. They're going to be overrun. Barrows knows it with the same certainty he knows his own name. The math is simple, 15+ fighters closing from 2 directions against 3 men, one of whom can't walk. The boulders provide cover, but cover isn't concealment, and the flanking group will be above them in less than a minute. A sound from the northwest. Faint, growing, rotors. "That's the bird," Phillips says. His voice cracks with something that isn't pain. "Cap, that's the bird." The helicopter, a little bird, small and fast and beautiful, appears over the western ridge, banking hard, nose down, engine screaming. It's early, 2 minutes early. Barrows has never loved a pilot more in his life. "LZ is 200 meters downhill," Barrows says. "Ray, suppressive fire. Phillips, I'm carrying you." "No, that's not a request." "Cap," Phillips grabs his arm. His grip is weak, but his eyes are sharp. "I'm 200 pounds of dead weight on a downhill slope. You carry me, you move half speed. They catch us both." "I'm not leaving, you're not leaving. You're doing the math. You and Ray move fast, you make the bird. You carry me, nobody makes the bird." A burst of fire from the flanking group. Closer now, much closer. Then, a sound. It's a small sound. In the noise of the gunfire and the rotors and the wind, it barely registers. A soft, wet impact like a fist hitting a pillow. A thud. Ramirez, he's face down on the rock. He didn't cry out. He didn't stumble. He just went down. 1 second he was a man, firing a rifle, breathing, thinking about his mother's enchiladas and a $20 debt and whatever else occupied the private territory behind his eyes. The next second he was a shape on the ground, weight without purpose, mass without meaning. Barrows stares at him. 2 seconds, 3, waiting for movement that doesn't come. "Ray, Nothing. "Ray, The back of Ramirez's robe is dark and wet. The entry point is somewhere in his upper back. Barrows can't see it clearly, doesn't want to see it clearly, because seeing it clearly means accepting it, and accepting it means processing it, and processing it means falling apart, and falling apart means dying. Ramirez is dead. No final words, no dramatic last breath. Just a thud and a silence where a person used to be. "Go," Phillips' voice, calm now, terrifyingly calm. "Go, Cap. I'm not, take his rifle, take the pack, get on that bird." Shut up and let me." "Brian," first name. Phillips never uses first names. "Look at me." Barrows looks at him. Phillips' face is gray, his lips are bluish. He's propped against the boulder with the M4 across his lap and his destroyed ankle bent at an angle that would make a surgeon wince. He doesn't look like a hero. He looks like a man who's done the math and arrived at an answer he hates. "I can't walk," Phillips says. "I can barely sit up. I'm bleeding, I'm going into shock, and those guys are 90 seconds from being on top of us. You carry me down that hill, we both die. You go alone, you live, that's it, that's the whole equation. I'm not leaving you. Then we both die and nobody tells the story. Nobody tells them what happened to Raymai. Nobody tells his mother." He pauses, swallows hard. "Nobody tells Jenny." Low blow, accurate but low. "You slow, stupid, ugly son of a just go." Phillips is shouting now, and his voice is raw and broken and furious. "Get out, you ugly bastard! Get out before I shoot you myself!" He means it, all of it. And Barrows knows, the way you know when someone is lying by the way their eyes move, the way you know a bridge will hold by the sound it makes when you step on it. He knows that Phillips isn't asking him to leave because he wants to die. He's ordering him to leave because he can't stand the thought of Barrows dying here, in the dirt, on a mountain that doesn't know their names. Barrows picks up Ramirez's SR-25, slings it over his shoulder, grabs the pack. "I'll come back for you," he says, and the words taste like ash. Phillips looks at him, a long, steady look. The kind of look that says everything a person can't say out loud. "I'm proud of you, I'm sorry, I love you in the only way men like us are allowed to love each other, which is by insulting each other and sharing bad food and dying on the same hill." "No, you won't," Phillips says, and smiles, a real smile, crooked, exhausted, and final. "Now move." Barrows moves. He doesn't run down the slope. He crashes. Gravity and desperation take over, and he slides and stumbles and falls and gets up and slides again, the shale roaring under his boots like an avalanche, the SR-25 banging against his spine, the pack catching on rocks and wrenching his shoulders. The little bird is on the LZ, he can see it, rotors spinning, a crew chief leaning out and waving frantically, mouth moving in words that the wind and the distance tear apart. Behind him, he hears Phillips open fire. The M4 cracks in short, disciplined bursts, covering fire, buying time with the only currency he has left. Barrows reaches the LZ. The crew chief grabs his pack, his arm, hauls him toward the open door. He stumbles, falls, gets dragged. The helicopter's engine screams. The world tilts as the bird lifts off, and through the open door, Barrows sees the mountain, the crest, the boulders, the tiny figures closing in from both sides. He sees the muzzle flash of the M4, still firing, then it stops. A pause, 2 seconds, 3. Then a single shot, different from the others. Not the sharp crack of the M4 aimed outward, but something softer, closer, pointed inward, one shot. The helicopter banks away. The mountain shrinks, the crest becomes a line, then a smudge, then nothing. Barrows sits on the floor of the little bird with the wind tearing through the open door and the engine roaring above him and the rifle across his lap and the wool cap still somehow on his head, and he presses his face into his hands. He doesn't scream, doesn't swear, doesn't hit anything. He cries, silently, completely. The way a man cries when there's no one left to be strong for. His shoulders shake and his chest heaves and the tears run down his face and into his palms and drip onto the metal floor of the helicopter. And the crew chief looks away, because looking away is the only kindness available at this altitude. Below them, the Hindu Kush rolls on in every direction. Mountains and valleys and ridgelines and slopes stretching to every horizon, indifferent and ancient and vast. The sun breaks over the eastern peaks and paints everything gold. It's beautiful, obscenely beautiful. The kind of beauty that makes you furious because it doesn't care. It doesn't know that 2 men just died on one of its nameless crests. It doesn't adjust its light. It doesn't dim. Barrows weeps into his hands, and the mountain turns gold, and the helicopter carries him away from the worst morning of his life. Except that's not what happens. Or rather, that's what happens in a version of the story that feels like a movie someone described to him once in a language he almost speaks. The helicopter, the rescue, the golden sunrise. It's there in his memory, solid and real and complete. But it's wrong. It's wrong the way a photograph is wrong when the shadows fall the wrong direction. It's wrong the way a song is wrong when one note is a quarter tone flat. You can't point to the error, you can't name it, but your brain knows. Somewhere in the basement of your consciousness, a clerk is checking files and finding pages that don't match. Let's go back. The crest. The boulders, Ramirez is dead, Phillips is dying. Barrows is running down the slope toward the LZ. Only there's no helicopter. He reaches the shelf of rock where the LZ is supposed to be, and it's empty. Just flat stone and an IR strobe blinking uselessly into the dawn light. No little bird. No crew chief, no screaming engine, nothing. He stands there, panting, bleeding from a dozen cuts where the shale sliced through his sleeves, Ramirez's rifle on his back, the pack on his shoulders, the cap on his head. Above him on the crest, the single shot echoes and fades, and then silence. The kind of silence that exists only in high mountains, not an absence of sound, but a pressure, a weight that pushes against your eardrums from the outside. The silence of places where humans were never meant to be, where the air is too thin and the wind is too cold and the distance between you and another living soul is measured in vertical miles. He's alone. The helicopter was supposed to be here at 0600. It's 0603, then 0610, then 0620. He sits on the edge of the LZ with his legs dangling over the shelf and he waits. And the fighters who killed his team don't come down the slope because maybe they're satisfied, or maybe they're regrouping, or maybe they saw him reach the bottom and decided one man alone on a mountain isn't worth chasing. He waits until 0700. No helicopter. The radio is dead. He checks the battery, the connections, the frequency. Everything is correct. The radio simply isn't connecting, as if the fob doesn't exist, as if there's no one on the other end. He starts walking. North. That's the emergency protocol. If extraction fails, move north toward the Pakistani border, 26 kilometers through mountain terrain. There's a village on the other side, a friendly asset, a safe house. He memorized the grid coordinates during the brief. 8 digits that mean the difference between survival and a slow death in the mountains. He walks. The first day isn't bad. Adrenaline and muscle memory carry him over the initial terrain, a series of descending ridges that require more climbing than walking, but his body knows how to climb. His body has been climbing things since basic training, 16 years and a lifetime ago. Hands and feet find holds without consulting his brain. Knees bend and straighten in rhythms that predate thought. He drinks from the canteen, the warm plastic water. He rations it small sips, 1 per hour, because the canteen is all he has and the nearest water source is God knows where. The sun tracks across the sky. Shadows rotate. The temperature swings from freezing dawn to scorching midday to freezing dusk in a cycle that feels like being slapped back and forth by an indecisive season. He doesn't think about Phillips. He doesn't think about Ramirez. He files them away, locks the drawer. He'll open it later when he's safe, when the luxury of grief won't kill him. For now, they're mission data, casualties, numbers on a report he'll write if he lives long enough to hold a pen. The second day is bad. The water runs out at noon. His lips crack. His tongue swells. The air is so dry it pulls moisture from his skin like a sponge wringing itself out. He can feel his blood thickening, not literally, but the sensation is there, a sluggishness in his veins, a heaviness in his head that makes every thought arrive late, like a train on a disrupted schedule. He keeps walking. The terrain blurs, ridgelines merge, valleys repeat. He starts to doubt his navigation. The grid coordinates that were sharp in his mind yesterday are fuzzy today, the digits swapping positions, the decimal points drifting. He checks his compass. North is north. He's on course, probably. The compass doesn't lie. But the compass also doesn't know that the man holding it is starting to see things that aren't there. Small things at first. A flash of movement in his peripheral vision. A bird, a shadow, nothing. Then a sound, his name, whispered, carried on wind that doesn't exist. Then a shape on the ridge ahead that looks like a man standing still, watching him until he blinks and it becomes a rock. The third day. He can't remember the third day, not fully. It exists in fragments, like a mirror dropped on a stone floor. He can see pieces, sharp and clear, but the connections between them are gone. He remembers crawling. He remembers the taste of blood in his mouth from cracked lips. He remembers the sun being very close, much closer than it should be, as if it descended specifically to look at him. He remembers lying on his back on a flat rock, staring at the sky and the sky staring back. And then the helicopter. It comes from nowhere. One moment empty sky, next moment a little bird hovering impossibly steady 30 feet above him. No dust disturbance, no rotor wash pressing against his clothes, no sound. That's the part that should matter most. A helicopter is one of the loudest machines humans have ever built, a screaming confluence of engine and blade and displaced air, and this one is silent. Perfectly, completely silent. A crew chief leans out. He's wearing a helmet with a dark visor and his face is not there, not hidden, not obscured, just absent. A smooth, dark space where features should be, like a mannequin in a flight suit. His hand reaches down, steady, waiting. Barrows reaches up. The hand closes around his wrist. The grip is firm and warm and feels like safety, and the word fills his chest like warm water, drowning everything else, the thirst, the pain, the grief, the coordinates that no longer make sense. He's pulled upward. Into the helicopter. Into a space that smells like nothing and sounds like nothing and feels like floating. The helicopter doesn't turn, it doesn't bank, it simply moves, smoothly. The mountains below slide past like a painted backdrop on a track, no turbulence, no vibration, no sense of speed or direction, just motion, clean, frictionless, artificial motion. Through the open door, the Hindu Kush is wrong. The peaks are too symmetrical, the valleys too even. The snow on the summits catches light from a sun that's in the wrong position, too high, too white, too still. It looks like a photograph of mountains, not mountains themselves. The crew chief sits across from him, faceless behind the dark visor, not moving, not breathing. A shape filling a seat, nothing more. Barrows looks down at his hands. They're clean, no blood, no dirt, no cuts from the shale. His fingernails are trimmed, his sleeves are intact. The wool cap is on his head, but it's dry, fresh. It smells like nothing. He should be terrified, he knows that. Some part of him, the clerk in the basement, the one checking files, is screaming that none of this is right, that helicopters make noise and crew chiefs have faces and hands don't stay clean after 3 days on a mountain. But the warm feeling is stronger. Safety. Relief. The sensation of being caught after a long fall. He closes his eyes. When he opens them, he's standing on a road. A wet, cold road lined with bare trees and dark houses. Virginia. The air smells like ozone and damp leaves and drier sheets. He looks down, his boots are filthy, his jacket is torn, the cap is in his hand, damp with sweat. He starts walking. Ahead at the end of the street, a house. Blue shutters, flagstone walkway, a warm amber glow bleeding through the downstairs curtains. The porch light is off. He walks toward it. And somewhere, in a room he can't see, in a building he doesn't know exists, in a country he thinks is behind him, a man in a white coat checks a monitor, nods to himself, and says a single word in an accent that doesn't belong to Virginia or Afghanistan or anywhere Barrows has ever been. Good. The road is wrong. Not obviously wrong, not bent or broken or missing. It's wrong in the way a photocopy of a photograph is wrong. All the details are present, the wet asphalt, the yellow center line, the bare oaks lining both sides like skeletal sentries. But they've lost a dimension. Flattened. As if someone described this road to an artist who'd never been here and the artist did his best. Barrows stands in the middle of Maplecrest Lane, 4 blocks from his house, and the cold is different now. In part 1, though he doesn't think of it as part 1, doesn't think of it as anything except before, the cold was wet, heavy, a Virginia cold that sat on your chest. This cold is thinner, sharper, it cuts rather than presses, and when the wind blows it carries no smell, no ozone. No damp leaves, no drier sheets, just cold air that tastes like nothing, as if the atmosphere has been scrubbed clean. He doesn't notice, not consciously. The clerk in the basement of his brain notices, files a complaint, and is ignored. His boots are still filthy, his jacket is still torn. The cap is in his hand, he switched it from his head somewhere in the last few minutes, though he can't remember doing it. He squeezes it once. The wool is damp, but the dampness feels artificial, like a sponge that's been sitting in a tray too long. Headlights. They come from behind him, 2 beams sweeping around the curve at the end of the block, cutting through the dark with a brightness that makes him squint. A car, moving fast, then slowing, then stopping. The engine idles with a low, familiar rumble. He knows that engine. It's his car. A 2017 Ford Bronco, dark green, with the dent in the rear quarter panel from the time Jenny backed into a fire hydrant in the Costco parking lot and blamed the hydrant. He can see the dent in the headlight spill, a crescent-shaped dimple in the metal that he's been meaning to fix for 2 years. The driver's door opens. Jenny steps out. She's wearing a dress he's never seen, red, close-fitting, the kind of dress that belongs at a dinner party, not on a residential street at midnight. Her hair is down, dark and glossy, arranged with the kind of deliberate carelessness that takes 30 minutes to achieve. She's wearing heels, on the wet road, in the cold, as if she dressed for an audience. She's smiling. Brian. She says it the way you'd greet someone at a cocktail party. Bright, musical, no surprise, no confusion, no why are you standing in the middle of the road at midnight in a torn jacket. Just his name, wrapped in a warmth that feels rehearsed. I was hoping you'd be out here. He stares at her. The cap tightens in his fist. Jenny, you look terrible. She says it cheerfully, like she's commenting on a bad haircut. She leans against the car, his car, and crosses her arms. Were you at the house? I thought I heard the front door. You know I was at the house. Of course I do. Still smiling. The smile doesn't move. It's fixed, the way a mask is fixed. The muscles around it are active, but the smile itself is a constant. I wanted you to see it. The table, the candles, wasn't it beautiful? I worked all afternoon. Who is he? Brian, who is he? She tilts her head. The gesture is wrong, too slow, too deliberate, like a bird studying something on the ground. You're going to be so happy when I explain. I'm not going to be happy. You are. She pushes off the car and takes a step toward him. Her heels click on the asphalt, a sharp metronomic sound. Click, click, click. I did it for you, for us, for your career. The word hits him like a slap. Career. The thing he doesn't talk about, doesn't think about. The festering awareness that 16 years in Special Forces has left him exactly where he started. A captain watching men with half his experience, and twice his connections climb past him into offices with real furniture, and windows that open. The quiet, corrosive suspicion that he's good enough to die for his country but not good enough to be promoted within it. She knows, she's always known, and she's using it now like a key in a lock. What does my career have to do with everything, baby? She says baby the way she'd say obviously. You think captains get anywhere in this army without connections, without someone opening doors? You need people above you who owe you something. What did you do? I made friends. With a general. With the right general. Her smile widens. It shouldn't be able to widen, it's already at maximum, but it does, stretching into something that shows too many teeth. The kind of general who can make a phone call and turn a captain into a major overnight. The kind who can take a man who's been stuck in the same rank for 6 years and put him somewhere that matters. By sleeping with him. By being strategic. She says it without flinching, without blinking, without any of the micro-expressions that accompany shame, no dropped gaze, no shifted weight, no tightening around the mouth. She delivers the word like a thesis statement. You do your job over there, I do mine over here. That's a partnership, Brian, that's a marriage. He can't speak. The words are there, 100 of them, 1,000, but they're jammed in his throat like cars in a tunnel, honking and going nowhere. That's when the general steps out of the shadows. He comes from the direction of the house, from the driveway, maybe, or the yard, or somewhere else that Barrows can't place because the geography of the street seems to have shifted slightly, as if the houses rearranged themselves when he wasn't looking. He's tall, broad. He moves with the slow, heavy authority of a man who has never been questioned. His coat is the same one from the closet, dark, heavy, 2 stars on the shoulder. His shoes click on the pavement, not the sharp click of Jenny's heels, but a deeper, duller sound, the sound of weight. And his face isn't there, not missing, not hidden behind a hand or turned away. It's present but empty. The features exist in the way that features exist in a dream you're trying to remember. You know there were eyes and a mouth and a nose, but when you try to picture them, they slide away. Barrows looks directly at the general's face and sees a blur, a smear of skin-colored shadow where a human face should be. Jaw, maybe, cheekbone, probably, but nothing coheres, nothing resolves. It's like trying to read a sign through frosted glass. The general doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. He stands in the driveway, Barrows's driveway, in front of Barrows's house, next to Barrows's car, and his posture says everything his absent face cannot. I belong here, you don't. Say hello, Brian, Jenny says. Her voice has the sing-song quality of a parent coaching a shy child at a family gathering. Don't be rude. I can't, Barrows's voice catches. I can't see his face. What? His face? I can't, it's don't be dramatic. She waves her hand dismissively. You're embarrassing me. 2 more figures step out from behind the general. They emerge from the same vague shadow, as if the darkness is a stage wing from which actors appear on cue. They're wearing ACU's Army combat uniforms, and they're armed, sidearms holstered but unsnapped. Their faces are clear. Too clear, in fact, sharp-featured, lit from a light source Barrows can't identify. He knows them. Stiles and Landry, both sergeants from his battalion. Stiles tall, blonde, with the permanent sunburn of a man who's always just returned from somewhere hot. Landry, shorter, darker, with a jaw like a brick and hands that are always doing something, tapping, adjusting, checking. They were at Bagram when he left. They were supposed to be at Bagram. Stiles, Barrows says. What the hell are you doing here? Stiles doesn't answer immediately. He looks at the general at the blur where the general's face should be, and something passes between them. A signal, a permission. Then he turns back to Barrows. Captain Barrows. His voice is flat, official, the voice of a man reading from a script. We need to talk about what happened on the mountain. The mountain. The words land in Barrows's chest like stones dropped into still water. What about the mountain? Specialist Phillips, Stiles says. Sergeant First Class Ramirez. What about them? They're dead, sir. I know they're dead. I was there. Yes, sir, you were. Stiles pauses, that loaded, deliberate pause. That's the problem. The wind picks up. It pushes against Barrows's back, cold and scentless, and the bare oaks along the street sway in a rhythm that looks synchronized, all of them bending the same direction, the same distance at the same time, like a chorus line. What exactly are you saying, Sergeant? Landry steps forward. His hands are doing the thing, tapping against his thigh, adjusting his belt, checking his holster. Nervous movements, except his face isn't nervous. His face is set and certain. We reviewed the after-action, Landry says. The timeline doesn't add up, Captain. You were the only one who made it off that mountain. Phillips was wounded. Ramirez was down, and you came out clean. I didn't come out clean. I came out alive. There's a difference. Is there? Jenny's voice from behind him. She's moved. She's closer now, and he didn't hear her footsteps, which should be impossible because she's wearing heels on asphalt and the sound should carry. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you left them there. I didn't leave them. Phillips was alive when you left, Stiles says. You admitted that yourself. He was wounded, conscious, armed, and you walked away. He told me to go, he ordered me. A specialist doesn't give orders to a captain. Styles tilts his head, the same wrong tilt that Jenny used, too slow, too mechanical. You outranked him, you could have carried him. His ankle was destroyed, the fighters were, you could have stayed and fought. Against 15 men with a wounded, Ramirez stayed. Landry's voice is quiet, pointed. Ramirez didn't run. Ramirez was dead. Before or after you left? The question hangs in the air like smoke. Barrows feels something fracture inside him, not anger, not yet, but the scaffolding that holds anger at bay, the structure that separates I'm being questioned from I'm being accused. Ramirez was dead before I moved 10 feet. Instantaneous. You saw what you needed to see. Jenny is beside him now. When did she get beside him? Her perfume fills his nostrils, something floral and expensive, not the vanilla body spray she usually wears, something he doesn't recognize. You saw what made it okay to leave. And Phillips, Styles again, relentless. The gunshot, the single shot you say you heard, how do you know he fired it himself? Because were you watching? I was on the slope, so you didn't see it. I heard it. You heard a shot, one shot, from a position you'd already abandoned. Styles steps closer. His blue eyes are flat and empty like painted glass. For all anyone knows, Captain, that shot came from someone else entirely. You think I killed him? Nobody speaks. You think I killed Phillips? Jenny puts her hand on his arm. Her touch is cold through his jacket sleeve. Nobody's saying that, Brian. They just said that. They're asking questions. That's their job. That's what happens when 2 men die and 1 man walks away. She squeezes his arm. Her nails press through the fabric. You should have expected this. You should have been prepared. The general hasn't moved. He stands in the driveway like a monument, silent, faceless, immovable. His presence is gravitational. Everything orbits him. Jenny, Styles, Landry, even the trees seem to lean in his direction. Barrows looks at the faceless blur and feels something he hasn't felt since the mountain, not fear, not anger, vertigo. The ground beneath his feet feels uncertain. Not physically, the asphalt is solid, wet, real, but structurally. As if the road is painted on something thin, something that could tear, and beneath it is a drop that has no bottom. This isn't real, he whispers. Nobody hears him, or nobody acknowledges it. The general has been very patient, Jenny says. She's steering him now, physically steering him with her hand on his arm, turning him toward the house. He wants to help you, Brian. He wants to make this go away. All you have to do is understand that what we did was for you. She stops, turns to face him. The streetlight catches her eyes, and for a moment, just a flash, just a frame, her pupils are wrong. Too large, too dark. Not dilated by low light, but dilated by something deeper, as if the black of her pupils has eaten the iris entirely. Then she blinks, and they're normal. Come inside, she says. Let's have dinner. The stroganoff is still warm. She smiles. And behind her, the general with no face stands in the driveway of a house that used to be a home. And the 2 soldiers who are calling him a murderer flank the door like guards at a gate. And the wind blows through the bare oaks in perfect mechanical unison, and somewhere, in a room he can't see, in a country he doesn't know, a woman he's never met leans into a microphone and speaks with his wife's voice. Come inside, Brian, let's have dinner. He doesn't go inside. He runs. He doesn't get far, 3 blocks, maybe 4. The street repeats itself, same houses, same trees, same cracked sidewalk, as if the neighborhood is a loop, a closed track that bends back on itself no matter which direction he runs. He turns left and Maple Crest Lane is ahead. He turns right and Maple Crest Lane is ahead. He stops, breathing hard, hands on his knees, and when he looks up, he's standing in front of 1412. Blue shutters. Flagstone walkway, the amber glow behind the curtains. The street won't let him leave. He's trapped in a geography that doesn't obey physics, and the worst part, the truly unbearable part, is that it almost makes sense. Streets curve. People get turned around. In the dark, in the cold, in the fog of exhaustion, any neighborhood can become a maze. There's a rational explanation. There's always a rational explanation. And the rational explanation is just plausible enough to stop him from questioning the deeper wrongness. They're waiting for him, all 4 of them, Jenny by the car, the general in the driveway, Styles and Landry on either side of the porch steps. A tableau, a stage set, waiting for the lead actor to arrive so the scene can continue. Done running. Jenny asks. She's lit a cigarette. She doesn't smoke, hasn't smoked since college. She told him that on their 3rd date said she quit because it made her hair smell like a campfire. but here she is, leaning against the hood of his Bronco, cigarette between two fingers, exhaling a plume of white smoke that rises straight up in the windless air. Jenny. You don't smoke. I do now. She takes another drag, the ember flares orange. Things change, Brian, people change, you've been gone a long time. I've been gone 6 weeks. Has it only been 6 weeks? She looks at the cigarette as if seeing it for the first time. It feels like longer, it feels like years. He walks toward her, not running, not charging, walking. The deliberate, measured pace of a man approaching something dangerous with his eyes open. His boots scuff the wet asphalt. The cap is in his left hand. His right hand is empty, but the fingers are curled, ready. Tell me who he is. I told you he's not his rank. His name, tell me his name. Something flickers across her face. A glitch. A micro-expression that doesn't belong to the character she's playing, not Jenny the cheerful strategist, but someone else. Someone confused, lost, as if the question reached a layer of the performance that hadn't been scripted. His name isn't important. It is to me. Brian, say his name, Jenny. She opens her mouth, closes it, opens it again. The cigarette trembles between her fingers. For 3 full seconds, she stands there with her lips parted and nothing coming out, like a singer who's forgotten the lyrics. And in those 3 seconds, the wrongness of everything, the looping street, the scentless wind, the faceless general, the cigarette she doesn't smoke, presses against the inside of Barrows's skull like water against a dam. Then she smiles. The mask snaps back into place. Let's not make this about names, let's make this about us, about what I did for you. What did you do? I told you I made friends, with one general, with more than one. She says it casually, the way you'd mention you tried a new restaurant. These things take time, Brian, networking, relationship building. You have to invest in people before they invest in you. How many? How many what? How many men, Jenny? She considers this, actually appears to calculate, tilting her head, counting on some internal register. The gesture is obscene, not because of what it implies, but because of how little it costs her. She's counting lovers the way you'd count grocery items. 6 or 7. It's hard to keep track. The dam breaks, not slowly, not in stages. It breaks the way a bone breaks, one moment structural, the next moment not, with a sound that exists only inside the body. Something inside Barrows that was holding back everything. The mountain, the blood trail, the single shot, the helicopter that wasn't real, the face that isn't there, the name she can't say, the word honeybear dripping from her mouth like spoiled honey, that something cracks in half, and what comes flooding through isn't rage. It's worse than rage. It's clarity. The false, horrible clarity of a man who has stopped asking questions and started making decisions. He moves. Styles sees it first. He's trained, they're all trained, that's the cruelty of it, his own brothers, his own uniform, and his hand drops to his sidearm. But Barrows is faster. Not faster in the way movies show fast, no slow motion, no dramatic pause. Faster in the way that a man who has spent 16 years learning exactly how to close distance and disable a human body is faster than a man who has spent those same years standing guard at checkpoints. He covers the 6 feet between them in 2 steps. Styles's hand reaches the grip of his pistol. Barrows's boot reaches Styles first. The kick is surgical. Not a wild swing, not a haymaker with a leg, it's a targeted hip-driven strike aimed at the junction of the thighs. The kind of kick they teach in combatives, the kind that's designed to end a fight before it becomes one. His boot connects with a sound that's soft and hard at the same time, the muffled impact of something delicate being destroyed inside something solid. Styles folds. Not backward, not sideways, inward. His entire body collapses toward the point of impact like a building imploding from the ground floor. His hands leave the pistol and go somewhere else down, protective, too late. The sound that comes from his mouth isn't a scream. It's a whistle. A thin, high, airless sound like steam escaping a kettle. His knees hit the pavement and he topples sideways, curling into a shape that isn't a person anymore but a punctuation mark. A comma on the wet ground. Landry charges. He's braver or dumber or both. He comes straight at Barrows with his fists up and his weight forward, the classic aggressive approach of a man who trusts his size. Landry is thick-necked, heavy-handed, a bar fighter's build. In a normal circumstance, his momentum would be an advantage. This isn't a normal circumstance. Barrows sidesteps. Landry's punch grazes his shoulder, a glancing blow that barely registers. Barrows pivots. His right hand, the one that's been empty and curled and ready since he started walking, comes around in a short, compact arc. Not a punch, a strike, palm heel. The base of his hand connects with the hinge of Landry's jaw just below the ear at the precise point where the mandible meets the temporal bone. The sound is terrible, a wet crack like a branch breaking underwater. Landry's eyes go blank, not closed, not rolled back, but blank as if someone hit the off switch behind his retinas. He drops, straight down. Vertical to horizontal in less than a second. His head bounces once on the asphalt with a dull, ripe sound, and then he's still. The whole thing takes 4 seconds. 4 seconds and 2 trained soldiers are on the ground, one curled and whistling, one flat and silent. And Barrows is standing over them with blood on his right hand that isn't his and a heartbeat that hasn't increased by a single beat per minute. Because this is what he is. This is what they made him. 16 years of training and deployment and repetition, and the result is a man who can dismantle 2 armed soldiers in the time it takes to tie a shoe and feel nothing while doing it. Not triumph, not guilt, not satisfaction, nothing, just the cold mechanical aftermath of a process completing itself. The general hasn't moved. He stands in the driveway, faceless, silent, hands at his sides. Not threatened, not retreating, a monument observing weather. Barrows bends down and takes Landry's sidearm from its holster, a Beretta M9. He checks the chamber by feel, round seated, safety off. 15 rounds in the magazine. He holds it at his side, barrel down. He turns to Jenny. She hasn't moved either. She's still leaning against the Bronco, but the cigarette has fallen from her fingers and lies on the wet asphalt, ember hissing against the moisture. Her smile is gone. In its place is something that looks like fascination. Not fear, not the fear a normal woman would show watching her husband destroy 2 men in 4 seconds, but the wide-eyed, parted-lip fascination of a spectator at a performance. "Brian," she says, her voice is different, lower, breathier. "That was don't." He raises the Beretta. The barrel points at her face. Center mass would be professional. The face is personal. She doesn't flinch. She should flinch. Every human being with a functioning survival instinct flinches when a gun is pointed at their face from 6 feet away. But Jenny Barrows, this version of Jenny Barrows, this red-dressed, cigarette-smoking, 6 or 7 men Jenny Barrows, doesn't flinch. She stands perfectly still and looks at the gun the way she looked at the violence, with interest. "Are you going to shoot me? I'm thinking about it. That's not very romantic. Nothing about this is romantic. I disagree." She takes a step toward the gun, toward it, closing the distance. A soldier comes home from war, finds his wife with another man, takes violent revenge on everyone involved. That's the oldest story in the world, Brian. That's practically a love song. The gun is steady. His hand doesn't shake. His arm doesn't tire. 20 ounces of steel and polymer, and he could hold it like this for an hour without a tremor because that's what training does. It removes the human from the mechanism. He looks at her. Her makeup is running. Not from rain, it hasn't rained, but from something else. Sweat, maybe, or the residual moisture of the night air. Her mascara has traced dark lines from the corners of her eyes down her cheeks, 2 black tracks that cut through her foundation and make her face look cracked. Fractured, like a porcelain doll left in the rain. She looks like a clown. The thought arrives with a finality that surprises him. Not beautiful, not terrible, not the love of his life or the ruin of it. Just a woman in a red dress with mascara running down her face, standing in front of a house that doesn't feel like home anymore, in a neighborhood that loops back on itself on a night that smells like nothing. A clown in a costume performing for an audience of 1. 6 or 7 men, he says, and you can't even tell me his name. Brian, you aren't worth the lead. He lowers the gun. Not slowly, not dramatically. He just lowers it, the way you lower a tool when you're finished with a job. The barrel drops to his side. His finger comes off the trigger. The decision is made not from mercy, not from love, not from any of the noble reasons a man in a story is supposed to spare a woman. He lowers the gun because pulling the trigger would mean she mattered enough to spend a bullet on, and she doesn't. Not this version of her. Not the mascara clown with the names she can't remember and the career advancement plan that reads like a transaction. She isn't worth the action it would take to end her. Jenny's face changes. For the first time, the first real, unscripted, unmasked time, something genuine crosses her features. Not relief, not gratitude, confusion. As if the script said he was supposed to pull the trigger and he didn't, and now the scene has gone off book and nobody knows what comes next. "Brian," she says, and her voice cracks. "You can't just watch me." He tucks the Beretta into his waistband, steps over Stiles, who is still curled on the ground, still making that thin whistling sound. Steps past Landry, who hasn't moved. Walks past the general, so close he could reach out and touch the dark wool coat, so close he can smell the nothing that the general smells like, which is exactly that. Nothing and absence where a scent should be. The general's faceless head turns to follow him, or doesn't. It's impossible to tell. Barrows walks down the driveway, past the flagstones, past the ceramic frog by the garden hose where the spare key still sits. He reaches the sidewalk, turns left. The street doesn't loop this time. Maybe it never did, maybe the loop was in his head, maybe everything is in his head, and the houses thin out and the trees get taller and the darkness ahead is complete. He feels something shifting inside his chest. Not the wire broke a long time ago in another chapter of this night, and the pieces have been rattling around inside him like shrapnel. This is something else. A settling. A hardening, like wet concrete finding its form. He isn't a husband anymore. He isn't a captain. He isn't an operator or a soldier or a servant of a country that gave his wife to a general, and his rank to a dead man's file, and his friends to a mountain that doesn't know their names. He's a wolf. The word fills him the way Jenny's perfume filled the air, pervasive, inescapable, transformative. It changes the chemistry of his blood. It changes the way his feet hit the pavement. It changes the angle of his shoulders and the rhythm of his breathing and the way his eyes process the dark. He isn't running anymore. Wolves don't run. They hunt. They move with patience and purpose toward prey that doesn't know it's being stalked, and they don't stop, and they don't rest, and they don't feel anything except the cold, clean certainty that the world has wronged them and the world will pay. The uniform, the rank, the Pentagon. The machine that sent him to a mountain to kill and left him there to die and then accused him of murder and gave his wife to a man with no face and 2 stars on his shoulder. The whole rotting structure. The whole rigged game. He's going to tear it down. He adjusts the cap on his head, pulls it low, settles it into position like a helmet before battle. And Captain Brian Barrows, broken, deceived, rebuilt around a lie he doesn't know is a lie, walks into the American darkness with a stolen gun and a manufactured rage, and a purpose that was planted in his mind by a man he's never met, in a room he's never seen, in a country he thinks is behind him. He walks with the steady, tireless gait of a weapon that has been aimed and released. He doesn't know where he's going, but the men who built him do. The room is white. Not the warm white of a painted wall or the soft white of bed linen, but the aggressive, fluorescent white of a space designed to eliminate shadow. Ceiling tiles, floor tiles, walls, all the same blank, sterile shade, lit from above by long tube lights that hum at a frequency just below the threshold of hearing. The air smells like antiseptic and something fainter beneath it, river water, muddy and vegetal, leaking in through a ventilation system that pulls from outside. Through a narrow window, the Lorelei River moves sluggishly under a gray Pakistani sky. Brown water, flat banks, a landscape that looks exhausted, as if the earth itself is too tired to form anything dramatic. Dr. John Ozalik stands at the window with his hands clasped behind his back. He is a thin man, not slender, but thin, the way a rope is thin, with the suggestion of tensile strength beneath an unpromising surface. His hair is gray and cut short, almost military, and his face is composed of angles, sharp cheekbones, a narrow jaw, a nose that has been broken at least once and healed slightly off-center. He wears a white coat over a dark sweater, and his shoes are clean but old, the leather cracked along the creases in a way that suggests a man who takes care of what he has because he learned early that replacement is not guaranteed. He is 57 years old. He has not slept in 31 hours. He does not appear tired. Behind him in the center of the room, Captain Brian Barrows lies on a hospital bed. He is almost unrecognizable. The man who walked through Virginia in a torn jacket and filthy boots. The man who kicked a soldier's legs out from under him and pointed a gun at his wife's face and walked into the darkness calling himself a wolf. That man was solid, present, alive with rage and purpose. This man is a sketch of that man, a preliminary draft. His head is shaved, not closely cropped but razored clean, the scalp pale and vulnerable, mapped with small nicks where the blade caught on skin that wasn't held taut enough. His cheeks are hollow. The bones of his face, the orbital ridges, the zygomatic arches, the mandible press against the skin from inside, as if the flesh is retreating and the skeleton is advancing. His arms, strapped to the bed rails with padded restraints, are thin. The veins stand out like blue cords on parchment. He weighs, by Alik's estimate, approximately 62 kilograms. When he was captured, found dying of dehydration on a mountainside in Nangarhar province, 3 days after his team was killed, he weighed 89. IV lines run into both arms. One delivers saline and nutrients. The other delivers a cocktail that Alik designed himself, a precise blend of compounds that maintain REM sleep while leaving the brain's fear and memory centers hyperactive. The combination is delicate, too much sedation and the subject stops dreaming, too little and he wakes up. The balance requires constant monitoring, and Alik has been monitoring it for 11 days. Burrows is dreaming right now. His eyes move beneath closed lids, rapid, darting, the frantic saccades of a mind that is somewhere else entirely, living a life that doesn't exist, walking streets that were never built, having conversations with people who aren't in the room. His fingers twitch. His lips move, forming words that produce no sound. Occasionally, his body tenses, every muscle contracting simultaneously, the restraints pulling taut, and then releases like a wave cresting and falling. He is, at this moment, walking into the American darkness with a stolen gun and a manufactured purpose. He is calling himself a wolf. He believes every second of it. Alik watches him the way a watchmaker watches a mechanism, with attention. With care, with the particular tenderness of a man observing something he built. The door opens. Sheikh Mohammed enters without knocking. He is a compact man, shorter than Alik, with a neatly trimmed beard and eyes that hold the permanent calculation of a man who has never made an unconsidered decision. He wears a simple shalwar kameez, white, pressed, unremarkable. He carries 2 cups of tea. "How is our patient?" He hands 1 cup to Alik. The tea is green, fragrant, too hot to drink. "He is progressing." Alik wraps his fingers around the cup. The warmth is welcome. The room is kept at 18 degrees Celsius, cool enough to slow bacterial growth in the IV lines. The 3rd cycle is nearly complete. The narrative is cohering. "In language I understand, doctor." Alik allows himself a small smile. He believes it. The wife, the general, the betrayal, the accusation about his dead friends, he believes all of it. Sheikh Mohammed pulls a chair close to the bed. He sits, crosses one leg over the other, and studies Burrows's face with the detached interest of a man examining an investment. His body is very thin. The metabolic cost of sustained REM sleep is significant. His body is burning energy to maintain the dream state. We supplement with IV nutrition, but there are limits. Alik moves to the bedside. He checks a monitor, heart rate, blood oxygen, brain activity. The EEG shows the characteristic pattern of REM, high frequency, low amplitude, chaotic, a brain on fire. He is strong, however. His baseline fitness was exceptional. Most subjects deteriorate faster. Most subjects. The Sheikh's eyebrow rises. How many have there been? Enough to refine the process, not enough to perfect it. Alik adjusts the drip rate on the 2nd IV, a fraction of a milliliter per hour, the difference between a dream and a coma. Each subject is unique. The fears are different. The architecture must be custom built. And his architecture? Alik pulls a stool to the bedside and sits. He speaks the way he always speaks, measured, precise, with the faint musical accent of a man who learned English in Belgrade and refined it in London and has never quite decided which version to keep. The traditional approach to breaking a man is direct. Pain, deprivation, humiliation. You strip away his identity and replace it with compliance. He pauses, sips his tea. It works in a limited sense. You can make a man say what you want him to say, sign what you want him to sign, but you cannot make him believe. The mind simply retreats behind the pain and waits. Like hitting a sponge with a spade, you can beat it flat, but the moment you stop, it returns to its original shape. So you don't hit. I don't hit. Alik sets the tea down on the monitor cart. I feed. Every man carries his own destruction inside him, fears, doubts, insecurities. The dark things he thinks about at 3 in the morning when the house is quiet and his wife is asleep and the ceiling is the only audience for his worst thoughts. Those things are already there. I don't create them. I simply cultivate them. He gestures toward Barrows. This man, Captain Brian Barrows, 16 years of exemplary service, decorated, respected, lethal. Alik recites the facts without consulting notes. He has memorized them the way a novelist memorizes a character. But underneath the training, the discipline, the operational competence, he is a man who believes he is not enough. Not enough for promotion. Not enough for his wife. Not enough to belong in the clean, civilian world he fights to protect. He feels like a dirty intruder in his own life. How do you know this? Because he told us. Alik nods toward a table in the corner of the room. On it, a laptop, a microphone, a set of headphones, and a stack of transcripts, hundreds of pages, single-spaced, the recorded ramblings of a man in various stages of sedation and sleep. In the first 3 days before the dream cycles began, we conducted interviews under chemical relaxation. He talked about his wife, his home, his fear that she would leave him not for another man specifically, but for a life, a better life, a life without the absences and the silences and the mud on the boots and the things he can't talk about. And you used this. I used him. His own material, his own fears, his own vocabulary, his own private nightmares. I built the dream from pieces of his mind. The house is real. We obtained the address from his personnel file. The meal is real beef stroganoff, his documented favorite. The pet name, Alik pauses and something crosses his face. Not guilt, something adjacent to it. Something that lives in the same neighborhood. The pet name was in the transcripts. He said it while crying in one of the early sessions. Honey Bear. His wife calls him this. He considers it sacred. The sheik says nothing. I gave it to someone else. Alik's voice is quieter now. In his dream, his wife gives it to another man, a general. A figure of authority who represents everything Barrows fears, rank, power, the system that has kept him small. The wife isn't simply unfaithful. She is strategically unfaithful. She trades her body for his career advancement, which is the precise intersection of his 2 deepest insecurities, that she doesn't love him and that he isn't successful enough to deserve love. Elegant, the sheik says, and the word is clinical, not admiring. Functional, Alik corrects. Elegance is for architects who build visible things. I build in the dark. In the corner, a young woman sits at the table with the microphone. She has been there the entire time, so still, so quiet that she's easy to miss. She is perhaps 25, with dark hair pulled back and a face that carries no expression at all. She wears headphones. The microphone is positioned 6 inches from her lips. She is not Jenny Barrows. She has never met Jenny Barrows. She is an actress, recruited from a theater program in Karachi, told she is participating in a psychological research study, paid enough not to ask questions. She watches the EEG monitor. When the waveform shows a particular pattern, a spike in the temporal lobe, a signature that Alik has taught her to recognize, she leans forward and speaks. Honey Bear. Her voice is soft, warm, intimately American. She has practiced the accent for weeks, working from recordings that Alik obtained from Barrows's voicemail, Jenny's real voice, captured in mundane messages about grocery lists and dentist appointments and I love you, be safe, come home. The actress doesn't imitate Jenny. She channels her. The cadence, the breath placement, the way certain vowels round and others flat. I did it for you. I did it for us. On the bed, Barrows's body tenses, his lips part. A sound escapes, not a word, but the ghost of a word, a moan that carries the shape of a name. The actress watches the monitor, waits, speaks again when the spike returns. Come inside, Brian, let's have dinner. Barrows's fingers curl around the bed rails. The tendons in his forearms stand out like cables. He is, in this moment, standing on a street in Virginia, looking at a woman in a red dress, deciding whether to pull a trigger that doesn't exist, held by a gun he doesn't have, aimed at a wife who is 3,000 miles away and doesn't know he's alive. Alik watches the EEG. Good, he says. The sheik finishes his tea. He sets the cup on the floor beside his chair and folds his hands in his lap and watches Barrows twitch through a dream that is almost over. Tell me something, doctor. If I can. Why do you do this? It's a question that has been asked before by other clients, by colleagues, by the one journalist who got close enough to ask before being redirected by people who redirect journalists. Illik usually deflects. He offers professional explanations. The science is fascinating, the compensation is appropriate, the alternative career paths for a disgraced Serbian neuropsychiatrist are limited. All true, none sufficient. Tonight, in this white room, watching the river move beneath a gray sky, he decides to answer. Have you heard of Grdelica? The sheik shakes his head. It is a town in southern Serbia, small, unremarkable. There is a railway bridge there over a gorge. In 1999, during the NATO bombing campaign, an American aircraft, an F-15E, I later learned, though at the time I did not know what an F-15E was, fired 2 missiles at that bridge. He pauses. The pause is not for drama. It is for the management of something inside his chest that after 26 years still requires management. There was a passenger train on the bridge, an international express Belgrade to Thessaloniki. The first missile struck the locomotive. The second struck the passenger carriages, specifically the 4th carriage, the one in which I was sitting. The sheik is still. I was 31 years old. I was traveling to a conference in Greece. I had a paper to present, something about memory consolidation during REM sleep, which is, you will appreciate, somewhat ironic. I was sitting in a window seat. I was reading. The book was, he stops, smiles faintly. The book was The Remains of the Day, Kazuo Ishiguro. I never finished it. He stands, moves to the window. The Lorelei is darker now, the light is failing, and the water has turned from brown to black. The missile entered the carriage approximately 6 meters in front of my seat. I did not hear it. There is a common misconception that explosions are loud. They are not. They are silent, a great white silence that fills every space inside your skull and pushes everything else out. What is loud is after, the metal, the glass, the screaming, the sound of a train carriage folding in on itself like paper. His hand rests on the window frame, his fingers are steady. I went through the window, not out of choice, the blast wave ejected me. I remember the sensation of flying, not falling, flying. Horizontal across the gorge with pieces of the carriage around me, seats, luggage, fragments of wall, a shoe that was not mine. I remember thinking with perfect clarity, I am going to land in the river and I am going to die. And then I did land in the river, and I did not die. He turns back to the room. The water was very cold, March, snowmelt. I broke 7 ribs, my left clavicle, my right wrist, and my pelvis. I lacerated my spleen. I lost 4 teeth. I spent 11 minutes in the water before a farmer pulled me out with a rope he used for his cattle. How many died? On the train, 20. The official number was lower. The governments negotiated the count the way they negotiate everything, finding a number that was tragic enough to acknowledge but small enough to manage. But I counted the names in the hospital. 20. He sits back down on the stool. His movements are careful, deliberate, the movements of a man whose body remembers being broken, even decades later. The Americans expressed regret. Their pilot, they said, had mistaken the train for a military target. An error, a tragic, unavoidable error in the fog of war. The video, they said, showed the train moving onto the bridge after the first missile was fired, and the second missile, the one that entered my carriage, could not be redirected. He pauses. I have watched that video many times. The train is visible, clearly visible, a passenger train moving at normal speed on a railway bridge in daylight. And no one was held accountable. Accountability. Illik tastes the word. An interesting concept. When a man fires a missile from an aircraft traveling at 600 knots and that missile kills 20 people in a train, who is accountable? The pilot, the weapons officer. The intelligence analyst who identified the bridge as a target. The general who approved the strike. The president who authorized the campaign, the voters who elected the president. He spreads his hands. Everyone is responsible, therefore no one is. The mathematics of modern warfare. Distribute the guilt across enough people and it becomes homeopathic, diluted below detection. He looks at Barrows. I did not become angry immediately. Anger came later, years later, after the surgeries, after the rehabilitation, after I returned to a university that no longer existed in a city that had been reshaped by bombs. I became angry when I realized that the people who did this to me did not think about me. Not with hatred, not with remorse. They did not think about me at all. I was a line item, a statistical error, a regrettable incident in a campaign that their newspapers covered for 2 weeks and then forgot. "So this is revenge," the sheik says. "No," Ilik shakes his head. "Revenge is personal. Revenge requires a specific target, a man, a face, a name. I have no name for the pilot. I have no face for the general. They are abstractions, the same way I was an abstraction to them." He pauses. "This is not revenge. This is balance. They built a machine that reaches across the world and destroys people it has never met. I am building a machine that reaches back." The sheik absorbs this. His expression hasn't changed, the same calculated neutrality, the same composed attentiveness. He is a man who collects tools. Ilik is a tool, Barrows is a tool. The distinction between them is one of function, not value. "The process," the sheik says. "How much longer?" The dream cycle is nearly complete. The narrative has reached its terminal point. He has rejected his wife, assaulted the soldiers, rejected the institution. The psychological architecture is in place. He believes his country betrayed him. He believes his wife sold his intimacy for rank. He believes his own men accused him of murder. Ilik checks the monitor. The REM activity is slowing, the dream is winding down, the brain approaching a natural transition point. When he wakes, the false memories will be integrated, not as dreams, as experiences. He will remember Virginia the way you remember yesterday, completely, viscerally, without question. And the real memories? Suppressed, not erased. Erasure is impossible, but buried beneath the new narrative, the way a city builds over its ruins. He will know on some level that he was captured, that he was held. But the emotional weight of the false memories will overwhelm the factual weight of the real ones. He will feel the betrayal more than he remembers the captivity. "How can you be certain?" Ilik looks at him. "Because I built the dream from his own fears. I did not invent the insecurity. I did not fabricate the inadequacy. I simply gave them a story, a structure, a cause and effect." His mind will protect the dream because the dream explains his pain. It gives him a villain. It gives him a reason. People do not surrender their reasons easily. The sheik nods slowly, then asks the question that the entire operation has been building toward. "And the target? What is his target?" Ilik is quiet for a moment. He looks at Barrows, at the shaved head, the sunken cheeks, the twitching eyes, the fingers curled around bed rails as if gripping something that isn't there. A wool cap, perhaps, a weapon, a life. We did not give him a target. The sheik's composure for the first time shows a crack, a furrow between the brows, a tilt of the head. No target? A specific target can be intercepted. A specific target creates a specific investigation, a specific trail, a specific failure point. If we aimed him at a building or a person and he was stopped, the operation would end with his arrest. Ilik stands. He walks to the bed and looks down at Barrows with an expression that, in other circumstances, might be mistaken for compassion. Instead, we aimed him at an idea. We showed him the goats. The goats. An old Serbian expression. When a wolf is released into a valley, you don't point it at a specific goat. You show it the herd. The wolf chooses. The wolf decides which throat to tear based on proximity, opportunity, instinct. The outcome is unpredictable, which makes it unpreventable. He reaches down and, with a gentleness that seems impossibly incongruent with everything he has just described, adjusts the thin blanket across Barrows's chest. Captain Barrows does not have a target. He has an enemy, the uniform, the rank, the Pentagon. The system that sent him to war and left him to die, and in his memory, which is now the only reality he has, stole his wife and accused him of killing his friends. He will not attack a specific building or a specific person. He will attack whatever presents itself. A recruiting office, a military convoy, a Veterans Day parade, a man in uniform on a street corner. He steps back. He is not a missile. Missiles can be shot down. He is a virus, introduced into the organism, invisible, activated by contact with the pathogen, which, in his case, is anything that reminds him of the institution he believes destroyed his life. The sheik is quiet for a long time. The room hums. The monitor beeps. The river moves. When will he be ready? 3 days, perhaps 4. The dream must complete its final cycle, and then we begin the waking protocol, a gradual reduction of sedation that allows the false memories to consolidate during the transition from sleep to consciousness. When he opens his eyes, he will believe he escaped. He will believe he found his way home. He will believe everything. And then we give him back. Ilik returns to the window. The river is black now. The sky is black. Pakistan at night looks like the end of the world. We put him in a shipping container. We route him through Karachi, then Dubai, then a port on the eastern seaboard. He arrives in America the way a package arrives, stamped, sorted, delivered. He steps out into the country he loves, the country he served, the country he now believes is his enemy. He turns to the sheikh, and the wolf walks into the valley. On the bed, Barrows's eyes move behind closed lids. His lips form a word. The actress at the microphone leans in, reads the EEG spike, and whispers one final line into the dream. "I never loved you, Brian." Barrows's body goes rigid, every muscle, every tendon. The restraints creak. His back arches off the mattress. A sound escapes his throat, not a word, not a cry, but something older and more fundamental. The sound of a foundation cracking. Then he goes limp. The EEG flattens, slows, transitions from the chaotic fire of REM to the long, rolling waves of deep sleep. The dream is over. The weapon is built. Ilik watches the monitor until the readings stabilize. Then he removes his white coat. Folds it over his arm, picks up his tea, which is cold now. "Good night, Captain," he says to the sleeping man. He does not expect a response. He does not receive one. He turns off the overhead lights. The room goes dark except for the monitor's glow and the faint gray light from the window, where the Lorelei moves through the night like a vein carrying something vital toward a body that doesn't know it's sick. Virginia. The real Virginia. Not the flat, scentless, looping nightmare of a manufactured dream, but the actual place, messy, cold, imperfect, alive. The grass at Arlington National Cemetery is green even in winter. It's a particular green, dark, dense, maintained with the kind of obsessive precision that only the military can justify. Each blade is uniform. Each row of white headstones is aligned to the millimeter. The geometry of grief, ordered and controlled, because if you can control the grass and the stone and the spacing, you can pretend you've controlled the loss. Jenny Barrows stands at the edge of a freshly covered grave. Section 60, row 14. The headstone isn't placed yet. That takes weeks. But the earth is new, a rectangle of dark soil in the green field, marked with a small temporary placard that reads, CPT BRIAN JBARROS U.S. Army Special FORCES beloved husband. She is not wearing a red dress. She is wearing a black coat that is too big for her. His coat, actually, his civilian winter coat, the one that smells like him, the one she pulled from the closet the morning after the chaplain came to the door, because wearing his coat was the closest she could get to being held by him. The sleeves hang past her fingers. The hem hits her knees. She is holding a folded flag. The chaplain stands beside her. He is a young man, too young, she thinks, to be doing this, too young to have the practiced, gentle solemnity that this moment requires. He has said the words, all the correct, approved, regulation words about service and sacrifice and a grateful nation. She heard them. She will not remember them. What she will remember is this, the weight of the flag. Heavier than you'd expect. Dense, triangular, pressed into her arms with a formality that felt like being handed a piece of him, not the real piece, not the warm, clumsy, cap-clutching piece, but the official piece. The government-issued piece. The piece they give you when they've used up the rest. She stares at the dirt. She does not cry. She cried for the first 4 days, a sustained, oceanic grief that came in waves so large they knocked the breath from her body. She cried until her eyes swelled shut, and her throat was raw, and the neighbors stopped bringing casseroles because they ran out of things to say and dishes to carry. She cried in the shower, in the bed, in the kitchen where his stroganoff recipe was still pinned to the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a crab they'd bought at Virginia Beach. She is past crying now. She is in the territory beyond crying, a flat gray plane where emotions exist but don't move, where you function. Where you make coffee and answer the phone and sign documents and nod when people say he was a hero, and at least he didn't suffer and time heals. Because correcting them, telling them that you don't know if he suffered. That you don't know anything because they found nothing, because there was no body, just a report and a flag and a chaplain at the door would require an energy she no longer has. Mrs. Barrows, the chaplain's voice, gentle, practiced. Is there anything I can do? She looks at him. He has kind eyes, brown, earnest. The eyes of a man who chose this work because he believes in comfort and hasn't yet learned that comfort has limits. You can tell me what happened to him. Ma'am, the report says killed in action, remains not recovered. That's not what happened to him. That's paperwork. I want to know what happened. The chaplain is quiet. He has no answer. The answer is classified, redacted, sealed in a file that Jenny Barrows will never see. And even if she saw it, it would tell her only what they know, that her husband's team was killed during an operation in Nangarhar province, that his body was not found at the site, that search operations were conducted and concluded without recovery. It would not tell her that he was found alive. It would not tell her about the room or the river or the doctor or the dream, because no one on her side of the world knows those things yet. He was brave, the chaplain says. It's insufficient and he knows it. Jenny looks at the flag, runs her thumb across the fabric. The stars are raised, embroidered, and she can feel each one tiny, rigid points under the cloth, like braille she can't read. He was scared, she says. Every time he deployed, he was scared. He never said it. He'd put on that stupid cap and pick up his bag and kiss me like he was leaving for the grocery store, and I'd pretend I didn't see his hands shaking. We were both very good at pretending. She presses the flag against her chest. He used to call me from wherever he was. Couldn't say where, couldn't say what he was doing. He'd just call and say, "Hey, Jen, how's the lawn?" As if I'd mow the lawn, as if either of us cared about the lawn. He just wanted to hear something normal, something that wasn't. There, the wind moves through the cemetery. Cold, wet, Virginia cold. I never got to say goodbye. She stands at the grave for another hour. The chaplain leaves. Others leave. The cemetery empties. The light fades. And Jenny Barrows stands alone with a folded flag and a headstone that isn't there yet and a rectangle of dark earth where they buried nothing because there was nothing to bury. She loves him. She will always love him. Not the memory of him, not the idea of him. The man who tripped on the loose paver and forgot to fix it. The man who ate honey straight from the jar and laughed when she called him Honey Bear. The man who held a wool cap like a lifeline and came home muddy and ashamed and beautiful in his incompleteness. She loves him, and he is gone, and the flag weighs more than she can hold. 3 weeks later, Port of Norfolk, Virginia, 2 in the morning. The container yard is a grid of metal boxes, stacked 3 high, stretching in rows that disappear into the dark like a city built by machines for machines. The air smells like diesel and salt and rust. Somewhere a crane moves, somewhere a truck idles. The sounds are industrial, rhythmic, inhuman. A shipping container sits at the end of row 14. Blue, standard 20-foot unit. The markings indicate origin, Karachi via Dubai via a series of intermediary ports that exist on paper but not in anyone's memory. It has been here for 6 hours. No one has come to claim it. The lock turns. The door opens from inside. Brian Barrows steps into the Virginia night. He is changed. Not the gaunt, shaved ruin of the hospital bed that was weeks ago, and in the intervening time someone has fed him, clothed him, given him back enough of his body to function. He wears civilian clothes, jeans, a dark jacket, boots that are new and clean. His hair has grown back, short and dark, covering the razor nicks. His face is calm. Not the forced calm of a man controlling his emotions, but the deep structural calm of a man who knows exactly what he feels and why he feels it and what he intends to do about it. His eyes are clear. His jaw is set. His shoulders are level. He looks like a man with a purpose. He reaches into the container and retrieves 2 things. A duffel bag packed, he doesn't know by whom, with things he doesn't inspect. And a wool cap, his cap. He holds it for a moment, turns it over in his hands. The fabric is worn, dirty, stained with the sweat and dust of a deployment he remembers as vividly as his own name. He brings it to his face, breathes in. The smell is faint now, mostly wool, mostly damp, but underneath something familiar. Something that grounds him, something that tells the slippery world to hold still just for a second. He puts it on, adjusts it, pulls it low over his ears, settles it into the position it's occupied 1,000 times before, the position that means ready. He steps away from the container, walks down the row. His boots make no sound, force of habit, the habit of a man who enters places and leaves before anyone knows he was there. The night is cold. Virginia cold. Wet and heavy and alive with the hum of a country going about its business behind walls and curtains and closed doors. A country of warm kitchens and candle-lit tables and people laughing with people they love, and all of it, every light, every laugh, every closed door, is a lock on a life he was told he no longer owns. He was betrayed. He knows this the way he knows his own heartbeat, not as information, but as biology. His wife gave his name to strangers. His army gave his rank to silence. His country sent him to die and then erased him when he didn't die fast enough. He knows all of this. He remembers all of this. The crystal glasses and the general's coat and the mascara running down her face and the word honey bear in a mouth that wasn't his. He remembers it because it happened. It happened the way gravity happens, the way sunrise happens. The way a wife's laughter through a bedroom window on a Tuesday night happens. Certainly, completely, beyond question or revision. Except it didn't. None of it did. Not the dinner, not the general, not the slippers or the stroganoff or the red dress or the cigarette or the looping street. Not the accusation, not the violence, not the wolf in the darkness. None of it. Every memory that drives him forward was built in a white room by a thin man with a broken body and a broken country and a grief so old it has become architecture. But Barrows doesn't know that. He knows the cap on his head. He knows the road under his boots. He knows the cold and the dark and the purpose in his chest that feels like certainty and functions like a weapon. He walks. The container yard gives way to a frontage road. The frontage road gives way to a highway. The highway stretches west, toward Washington, toward the Pentagon, toward the machine. He doesn't have a plan. He doesn't need one. The wolf doesn't plan. The wolf walks into the valley and finds the herd and chooses. He walks with the steady, unhurried gait of a man who has all the time in the world and no reason to rush, because the country he's walking through doesn't know he's here. And the woman who loves him thinks he's buried in a box of dirt with a flag folded over nothing. And the man who built him is 6,000 miles away watching a river move through the dark, and the only person who could stop what happens next is the one person who doesn't know it's coming. The American night opens before him. Highways and rest stops and strip malls and recruiting offices and military bases and men in uniforms who walk through the world believing they are safe because the system protects them. The system sent Brian Barrows to war. The system killed his friends. The system stole his wife. None of this is true. All of it is real. He adjusts his cap. He walks.